2018. If anyone here is recording besides WACA, could you just let us know? Anyone else recording this? Okay, hear none. So I will, actually I'll ask, any objections if I forego the vision and mission statement tonight, board members? Okay, and I will,
It works for me.
I will ask Mark if you volunteer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, which is our customary.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Are you going to cancel the next thing too?
I may.
We may postpone
Have a seat,
it.
Mark. So, I'm looking at, I think there's a lot of folks here who are interested in public participation and maybe speaking to us about Eversource. Is that correct? All right, so what I'm thinking, and it is on the agenda, but what I'm thinking is, instead of having, we'll put off public participation until we finish our scheduled hearings and appearances, which I think will go along pretty well. This Hanto, do we have to do it that time?
Yes.
We do, okay, so we may have to see how that works out. Okay, so I'm going to is Peter Matchak here, or? Oh,
Peter's here.
Hi, come on up. So I'll turn that over to Michael.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I am pleased to inform the board and inform the community that we have hired our new town planner.
Hey.
Peter Matchak comes to us from the community, the town of Cohasset, where he was the director of planning. He's been serving as an assistant planner or a planner since 2014, so actually 2013. So he's got 6 years of experience. I think you'll see through the resume that he's got extensive experience in the planning field, but he also has a lot of experience in volunteer roles, including as part of the Rail Trail Committee in Danvers, and then also was a research assistant for conservation restrictions, which is actually something that we do a bit of here. So we're pleased to have him here, and pleased that he's taking on this role, and I'll turn it over to Peter.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Good.
First, I just want to thank you for having me here tonight. I'm very excited. This is my third day on the job. I've tried to walk around the downtown. I've been to Sunnyside twice. His Mike likes to tease me, but yeah, I had a couple great days. Today, I was out with the building commissioner, taking a tour of town, and I'm just excited to be here. And I would just offer it back up to you if you have any questions, or if you want me to kind of go dive deeper into my resume.
No?
No.
Questions, observations?
Yeah, just
before?
talk about your resume a little bit. It's impressive, but specifically talk about your involvement with the rail trail, because we have a lot of folks here that are supportive of that and think it would resonate pretty well.
Sure. So really quickly, last 18 months, I've worked as a director of planning in Cohasset. In Cohasset, we underwent a master plan development, a harbor plan development through state funding. We've also adopted complete streets, and we're getting started on a housing production plan. All great things from a planning sense. Prior to that, I spent 4.5 years. 4.5 years. Time flies when you're having fun. In the town of Hanover, and I kind of worked my way up, starting as the assistant town planner and then town planner, staffing the planning board, ZBA, CPC, Affordable Housing Trust, and any other hats they could throw on.
You
my
run the
head.
Danvers Rail Trail Committee.
Yeah,
Are you a resident?
So I'll get to that. I grew up in the town of Danvers, and in 2009, when I was a resident, still living with my parents like a millennial, I was going to graduate school at Salem State for GIS, and I had a very close relationship with the town planner at the time in Danvers, and she asked me to volunteer on the Danvers Rail Trail. The Danvers Rail Trail is about 3.3, actually I think it's about 4.5 miles of a rail trail that the town converted. It was an abandoned rail corridor that the town converted into a beautiful, one-of-a-kind rail trail project. at no
Great.
cost to the town. We did it with the labor of love and a couple grants from the MBTA for Crestone. And so in my early 20s, I spent my couple Saturday mornings digging holes and mixing concrete and, pouring it, putting seats on the rail trail and also doing cleanups and planting flowers. And it was something I did. I take great pride in doing. And it's been a great success for the town of Danvers.
Oh, good. Well, I hope, and I can't speak for the town manager and his priorities, but I hope you can, assist our Upper Charles Trail
Invent.
Committee as planner.
He wants you to miss the cement.
Yeah. But anyway, so, other questions, thoughts? I'd say it's just great to have a planner again, and we do have a lot of needs, as you alerted, and we have this Eversource project as well you may get familiar with that has some planning implications. But go ahead.
I just want to say, so some of the things that you've mentioned Cohasset was just doing, I'm sure you're, or maybe not completely aware. So we have Complete Streets. A lot of the things that you talked about, we've already put into place, but certainly some of them do need additional attention to make sure we can keep moving forward. Certainly Complete Streets is one of those projects that you need to keep submitting for grants. So working with Doug and our
everyone
Public
can
Works.
plan, but implementation is oftentimes the hardest part of all projects.
Exactly.
And so and I look forward to coming here to the town of Ashland and really trying to
Great.
implement some of the policies and the projects that you guys have already completed. I've already taken a look at the Complete Streets, and I'm certified, and I'm sure. I haven't caught up with the DPW director and the staff yet.
He's been busy.
But
so.
yeah, I'm sure I'll get around to it, and I'll meet them and really kind of widen my portfolio.
Great.
Just
Thank you.
one last thing, are you familiar with the governor's zoning bill for housing production and the kind of issues with that?
Yes, yeah, I'm fairly well. I'm aware of the legislative activity.
Something I may discuss with the board later. I'm wondering if we should get involved or take a position, and it's just I don't know if you had any thoughts on it. briefly.
I don't know, and I've looked over. I don't have enough information to
Yeah.
stand up and
Okay.
really kind of give you a
Something else
solid
to think
opinion
about.
on it.
Yeah.
I know, also on my resume, I served as the chair of the South Shore Planning Coalition, the chair of which is the MAPC subregion.
Uh-huh.
I know Ashland is the MAPC community in the Metro West subregion. I do plan to be active in that that coalition.
Very involved.
With that said, I know most of I am connected to the MAPC with the legislative activities through MAPC and the Baker administration. I do know. I am aware of Governor Baker's zoning changes. I think housing is an issue and it needs to be solved at the Metro Boston level, and it can't be solved by every single community.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peter.
If I could just make one final point, thanks, Peter. One change that we did make with the hiring of Peter is a few years ago we had a director of community planning and development who oversaw all aspects of things like building, conservation, even health to a certain extent. We got away from that, but with Peter's hiring, Peter actually oversees the building department now and can help a little bit with the zoning enforcement and things of that nature. So that's one little shift that we've made with Peter's hiring.
Nice.
So.
Okay.
Very good. Well, welcome aboard.
Good.
Yes,
All right,
welcome
yeah,
back.
thank you.
All right,
It's great
thank you
to
so
have
much.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, the next item we're ahead of schedule here is Ashland is United presentation. I see that Jane is here for that.
Hey,
Hi,
Jane.
everybody.
How are you?
My name is Jane Greenstein, and I am here to represent a community group, Ashland is United. Our logo is there on the screen. I don't know if that's going to show on the TV, but can you hear me? Oh, I have to do it here. It's manual. Awesome. I'm going to get my tech support. Thank you. Okay. Does that mean it's on the TV now?
It is.
Be all right? No, it was up there. I guess it's gonna be in both places. Well, while Susan is very nicely helping me with this, I'm just gonna keep talking. So Ashland is United is a community group of volunteers. We sort of put ourselves together about a year and a half ago. And because we're volunteers, it's been a slow burn to a bubble, and we're just starting to bubble. So we wanted to come and let Ashland know what we're doing, what we have already done, and what our hopes are for the future, and to make an ask of the Board of Selectmen tonight, a particular ask. Our goal is to help at the local level. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you. Our goal is to help at the local level do what we can to raise the mindset and the knowledge and the understanding in our community so that everyone in our town, regardless of where we come from, what our ethnicity is, what our religion is, what our language is, what our sexual orientation, gender orientation, no matter who we are, that we all feel like we're equal in town. And we have a wonderful community, and we can always do better. And in these times where the world is not always united, we want Ashland to be united. So we're trying in the ways that we can with the time that we have to try to push that message as much as possible into everything that happens in town. We have wonderful leadership in town that already thinks and is doing a lot of things with that in mind, and we just want to elevate that issue as much as it can be elevated. So that's our goal. What have we already done? We started, our kickoff event was Ashland Day, where we had a culture tent, where we tried to expose our community to cultures in our community that might not be as obvious, and teach people something about those cultures. And we also sponsored the wonderful main stage, where there's a lot of musical performances over the day. We had a section of the day where we sponsored multicultural music and dance, which was new for Ashland, I think, and we were really pleased to start our efforts that way. We had two amazing events, one in February and one in March, breaking bread together and baking bread together, and they were really well attended and well received, and it was an honor to sort of have those be our inaugural events. And we have been sort of co-sponsoring community events with this idea through Corner Spot, Courageous Conversations, and Light Up Ashland. So that was our first year. So what are we planning? We're hoping in June, very soon, we're finalizing our plan to have lawn signs that promote acceptance of diversity, that we'll do as a little fundraiser, $5, $10, we have to get the pricing still, that people can purchase and put in their land, just to kind of be a place to promote that message. So stay tuned for more information about that. We have a proposed plan to partner with the Friends of the Library to run a cultural cooking series as an extension of our breaking and baking bread event. We're awaiting the grant decision, which hopefully will be coming soon. We will be back at Ashland Day with something different and more. We don't know yet. That's our summer plan. And continuing to collaborate with everything that happens in town, so that there'll be more multicultural content and acknowledgement of historically non-represented groups and what we do. So here's our ask for the board tonight. June is Pride Month. June has been chosen as Pride Month in the greater world because for the LGBTQ community. And June was picked because the Stonewall riots happened in June in 1969, where many gay people were assaulted. So as a result, many Pride events are held during June to recognize the impact of LGBTQ individuals and that they've had on the world. So we're asking, as a way one of the ways in which we signify and actually act on our goals and our values, we're asking the town of Ashland to hang a rainbow pride flag at Town Hall during the month of June to communicate to all that we are an inclusive community that values our LGBTQ residents and employees. We know we don't have a flagpole. I know Framingham, they actually raise a flag on a flagpole somewhere. I know we don't have a lot of special flagpoles just lying around in Ashland open. So our thought was if there was a way to have the flag somewhere on the outside of Town Hall. I don't know if there's what the logistics are. We're very respectful and mindful. There are all kinds of rules and regulations, but we are asking that some creative plan be put in place as a statement for our community. We do have a flag that we can provide And we're just asking for it to be hung for June.
Is this something we can do where we normally put the American flag on our,
Bunting, maybe?
no, well, on the poles? You know, like Memorial Day coming up, we have our American flags we post downtown for Memorial Day. Is there some poles outside of Town Hall that we can potentially
don't-
post that?
I don't know. I do know we have a few flagpoles out, like dedicated flagpoles outside. I'm not necessarily sure, as Jane
Yeah, I
mentioned,
don't
what
think
the
Yeah.
mentions or the regulations would be
Right.
associated
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Or
I know
maybe
there's-
in place of some of the bunting that we put on Town Hall for the month, or,
Yeah, how large is the flag, Jane?
I think
Do
it's
you-
3.5 by 5 feet. It's not super big.
Standard size,
yeah.
3x5.
Sort of a, yeah, exactly, a standard
So we can
size.
look at that.
I
We can
promise it won't be like
definitely-
one of those giant American
It's-
flags
yeah.
that fly, you know?
No,
If the board's okay with
Yeah, I
it, we will
assume the
find a
board
way to.
suggests
Yeah, absolutely.
supportive, yeah, okay. So thanks, Shane.
Yeah.
So we'll work with the town manager to find a suitable place to hang your flag.
Thank you.
Good. Now, before you go,
Yes,
just to confirm, because it's later on in the agenda, we had,
Yes.
we had our initial grant round that we did, and then we
Mhm.
had questions for a few additional applications, and they
Yes.
since have come back. So we're actually awarding 4 additional grants tonight, including the one you're referencing, so.
thank you
all
again.
right?
You do
Couldn't be
great work,
prouder of
Jane.
Ashland.
You do great work.
Thanks, Jane. Okay, so I'm just,
do we need to take a vote for the flag, or do we
I
just
don't
need
think
to,
so.
we've given
Well,
you direction
we
to?
just
yeah,
give-
I think
Okay.
we're-
direction to do it.
So just a note, I'm just trying to get some of events, I'm thinking that people may want to speak, so I'm just trying to not clear out, but resolve some agenda items. So I don't, Chief, are you ready to present on the Fish and Game one-day license? Is that what, I presume you're here for that and not for crowd control?
They're not here yet?
You're not
Oh,
here.
all right, so, okay. So what, well, do we need them here for that, or?
Actually, I think they were gonna present.
Oh, okay, sorry, so we'll have to wait, okay, great, okay. All right, thanks. All right, so, and we can't do the other, does the Hanto hearing have to start at 7:30?
It
Yeah.
does, yeah.
All right, so why don't we get started with, why don't we deal with the Eversource item now and let people speak? And if we have to stop to open and continue the hearing, we can do that.
Fair enough.
So, so we're gonna move the Eversource item up. I'm presuming there are people that wanna discuss that. And, are there folks coming later to discuss it? 'Cause, so, as far as you know, or can we deal with it now, or? Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
Just come to the podium, please.
Yeah, come up here.
For the 3 words I have to say, I think Susan Nickel, who is Senate President Spilka's District Constituent Services Director, is planning to be here. She was going to be trying to leave Natick at 7:30, so,
Oh, she's gonna listen, I presume,
So
or?
why don't we why don't we leave that agenda item where it is, and
Yeah.
we'll start citizen participation for 10 minutes, and then we can, we'll
Okay,
have to go to Hanto,
Yeah.
so we could do that. So,
You-
and I may, wait a minute, Mark. So, let me just, I do want to update people on, you know, where we are with that. We have Eversource update. So, first of all, I wanted to thank folks for their input. We've gotten a lot of, especially since the hearing, we've gotten a lot of input from folks, and I think we see that the people are commenting to the EFSB, which is great, and so I think we all recognize the importance of people getting involved, and thank you for your involvement in this. So the update is just to, in terms of the process that's going on now, is that you know, evidence has been presented and questions have been asked, and I think the town had some specific questions, was asked questions about some of the route information and further detail they wanted to know on that, and also the legal question. I'm just thinking about stuff that's been publicly posted that I can speak about. You know, they had some questions about the legal right-of-way and things like that. And we're pretty much now in I think, kind of a deliberation process, and the town is preparing a brief on that, which will be filed. And I can't really say too much about that. We've met with town council about the contents of that brief and our position. And I would just remind people and call people's attention to the public position that the board has taken with the letter we sent to the FSB. And basically, just to summarize it, I'm assuming people have read it or are aware of it, that, you know, we've talked about that there's further questions, that this project basically should not continue until further questions have been resolved. And we brought up a number of questions, the first being more information on the need of the pipeline project as a whole, and then really questions about the alternative route, the preferred alternative and the noticed alternative, that more information was needed. And basically, the board has not changed its position on that, and that's our current position and what we'll be continuing with. So I don't know if there's other comments other board members or Michael wanted to make about that.
How about the dates? Might be good just to refresh the dates for the
Yeah.
briefs and the replies.
So as Rob mentioned, evidentiary hearings as part of this process have closed. Now we're in the final briefing stage. So Eversource and the town will be putting together and presenting what's known as final briefs, which is our final closing arguments. Those are due May 23rd. We then, as the town, have an opportunity to address the issues raised in Eversource's brief in what's known as a reply brief, in our reply brief, and that is due on June 6th. Also, Eversource has the ability at that point in time to address the concerns that we have raised in our briefs through their own reply brief, which is due on June 20th. From that point, I've been told it can take several months to even a year for the siting board to issue a decision. I've been told not to expect any decision earlier than 3 months or 12 weeks. I do expect them to look at this fairly analytically.
Other thoughts or comments from the board? So are there people that wanted to give us their impressions or say anything about this, or besides Mark? I guess it's gonna be Mark, okay. All right, Mark, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, at least it's being said, it's being told, that we have to wait. Second of all, I think if two towns could work together, you might get this a better positive way it's getting started. 3, Mr. Town Manager. According to the agenda, there's a couple of things I sent emails on that's gonna be talked on, the state budget, and there was one other, I can't think of it right now.
The home rule petition.
Yes, that one. And I have a little bit of a statement on that state budget one, if I can say, from citizen participation. It's short, it's quick, it's less than 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, we got about that, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I kind of was looking at the clock, making sure. I said this someplace else, I forgot where, but the state budget, and only getting, if it was true, what I sent email for was that business economic didn't get much. $100 according to what the paper said for incentives. So with that, I promote with support growth why I wanted to upgrade the town's zoning bylaws for business economic, because state is not gonna hear it. We got a new planner. As of now, as of this moment, I did pass zoning to get economic going. And I wanna work with the new town planner and zoning boards, town management on those zones. So it's gonna be going forward. The character of this town is changing, and it's changing for a slow, less moderate growth for seniors. Because of the, we have a community center, but it's not being really recognized big enough and constant enough. Organization, structures, process, and resources need to be said and gotta be confirmed and work from in-house to state house to make this town be what it is. And that's why I'm thankful for that Ashland United presentation. More voices can be heard. Even if they volunteer, they should be heard and should be done. Business is a plus to attract new, remarkable growth in the town. Have somebody come off the T station to work here instead of going out to Boston, Worcester, and help grow from there. Life in this town has been good, been formidable, friendly, but now it's time to turn the page and become forward. And the reason why I'm here standing up for all this and saying it loud and determinedly, through the chairman, Ms. Secretary, Ms. Sue Roby. My dad's having a great day today. He went out for dinner and had no dizziness. He's healthy, getting better. He bent over from waist to feet and back up with no dizziness.
Good news.
Right.
It's good news.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Okay. So, are we ready to proceed with the Hanto change of officers? 7:30. It looks 7:30 to me.
Yeah, close enough.
Okay.
How about, can we do the
Are they here?
consent, can we do the consent
Yeah,
agenda
they're
while
here.
we're?
All
All right, let's
waiting?
do that. Anybody, let's move to the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull any of them off?
We need to put it up on the screen first, so
All right.
let's do that.
Thank you, Susan. Oh, they were here, okay.
Do they want to stay? Do they want to talk? I think they have an attorney that's gonna probably do the talking for them.
Okay, all set.
All right, so there's the consent agenda
Okay.
for those, so,
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
consent agenda approval has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, all those against, nay. Motion carries unanimously, and thank you for James Norton for his service, all right.
Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we're ready to, I'm just gonna try to get through this hearing fairly expeditiously, yet with great justice for all, so, that's our usual. So, 7:30, Hanto, change of officers, stock, and ownership. Come on up. And
So move to open the hearing for Hanto change of, or transfer of ownership.
Second.
all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Motion, hearing's open. Thank you. Okay, so I don't know, does anybody want to review with us the issues? This is a continued, is there any, like, what were the, you want to remind us what we're doing here? Like why we're seeing them again, and
There were questions on the paperwork as to what was
Ah.
really happening.
Right.
Susan, are you ready to report on that? Have we resolved them, or we're gonna let them talk about that?
So I think we're gonna let them
Okay.
speak about it, but one of the concerns was, there was a question as to whether or not the change of ownership and the change of manager, and then the letter that was submitted, didn't reflect what was in the application. Those issues have been resolved, and we have here today the manager on record and the person that's gonna be in charge of the, corporation, along with their attorney.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Go ahead. ma'am.
Yes, my name is Mei Hui Hu. I represent Xinxin Inc., DBA Hanto. Correct, Susan pointed out, we actually submitted incorrect, box was incorrectly checked, and also there were some inconsistency. We make correction to those paperwork, and today we're here, the manager as well as the sole shareholder and officer of the corporation here. This business has been in Ashland for at least 8 years, and we really appreciate the community's support, and we would like to continue to offer good service to the community. Again, this is really a restructure of the corporation. The operation itself has not changed, no change of hours. And we're here to answer any question that you or the community might have for us.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for coming back. I appreciate
the expedience of getting all this paperwork in. I just want to make clarification that the manager is still going to be the same manager, and that would be whom? Who would that?
It will be Raymond.
So
He's-
Ray, you're
he's
still going to be
here.
the manager, okay?
Oh.
That was not actually
That-
clear with us. That's why I asked the question. That's why I wanted on record that Ray will be still the manager.
Yes, he will
And-
still be the manager.
I guess my next question would be, when Ray is not available and is not at the premise, who will be taking Ray's place as manager? Because that person needs to be tip certified, and that's a concern that I have, because I don't see anything that states who the other person would be.
So I'll let him answer that
Okay, thank you.
question.
Yeah, so Henry Chen will be fill up my schedule if I'm not there though.
Okay,
Yeah,
so Henry will be your replacement.
yeah,
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
you're
So
welcome.
the new owner, or the new president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary will have nothing to do with the day-to-day operations, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, she's just the corporate head of the business.
You got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make that clarification,
All right.
thank you.
Other questions from the board?
I'm good with that.
Is there anyone who wants to speak, and come on up and identify yourself? Sure.
So we'll back up a bit here.
My name is Robert Drake. I live at 366 Union Street. I am representing the neighborhood. For right now, we have two concerns. One, I thought when they were issued their license last year, it was for three-day weekends, I should say weekends for 3 weekends out of the month. 2 weeks ago, I went by and I saw a sign said live entertainment every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. I think that goes against what their entertainment license went for. Second, we've had issues with Ray going way back. He gives us the lip service, tells us yeah, but never resolves any issues. So we feel as long as he's involved, we're still gonna have the same noise issues that we've had right along. So as far as the entertainment license, we would request that it kind of be denied or modified to exclude every night. And I also have a photograph of this taken 2 weeks ago.
The sign, is that what you're showing us?
Yes.
So, but, maybe
But that's
didn't
not
we,
on.
I thought it was certain types of music that they were,
That's correct.
But I also assumed when we were here last time that it was only 3 weekends out of the month.
do we?
I think we have to
Do
go
you
back
have
and
that?
review that.
Yeah.
I think we have to review
Yeah,
that.
Bob, we don't have that information in front of
Okay.
us, so we're gonna have to review it.
Okay.
And- But let me ask you, have you made any complaints to the police department at all recently? that
Not
we can-
very
we can go
recently.
to?
It's been very muffled, but you still can hear it. But we're getting into the summer months
Yeah.
where our windows will be open.
Mhm.
And they have a habit of opening up that back door, even though they've been told constantly not to.
That was one of the concerns.
And that brings out more music,
It was. That
and
door needed to stay
it
shut.
interrupts our, quiet time. So we would like to, we want to work with them, we're willing to work with them, but we keep going down there and talking with them, and we get the lip service between Henry and Ray. We get the lip service. Yeah, we'll take care of it. Last time I went down, Ray said, well, he wasn't there. Well, who was there? He said he didn't know. So every time we have a problem, we try to go to them rather than go to the police station.
Okay.
We're trying to work with them.
So let me suggest this. First of all, this hearing is strictly about the transfer of ownership.
Understood.
It's not about any issues with their entertainment license at this point, but I think, you're obviously bringing up valid concerns here, and this has been long-term concerns, we know that. We've had Hanto in for complaints about noise in the past, so I think we need an opportunity to review the license and then come back and revisit this and handle it that way. And I
I-
would say if there are situations, our new police chief is sitting in the audience, that you.
I know him well.
Okay, so there, so you got an in, so
Yep.
it's,
But we thought, we assumed, and maybe we're wrong, that when the transfers, everything ended.
no,
Okay.
no.
We're just trying to
This is
clarify some
strictly a
stuff.
transfer of ownership of
Okay.
the stock shares,
Okay, right,
all right?
you know,
But let's,
Yeah,
we
your
will,
comments
we
are-
will, you know, we're gonna deal with it. But
Okay.
we're gonna need to do it separately.
we accept that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
you. Thanks, Bob.
What's the sense of the board here? You ready to move forward with this?
I think
Subject
the
then.
paperwork is now in order, it makes sense. Obviously, I think based on that conversation, we do need to look at what the entertainment license is and how it's being handled. But I think that has to happen at a later date.
Right, and just, I hope you folks are noting these concerns, which I think sounds like we're gonna be discussing them in the future. So, and I would note that I don't think we've received any formal complaints as far as we know of, so,
But certainly that door is an issue.
yeah.
Yep.
That
And, you know, as he
definitely was
said
part
with
of the
some,
conditions.
Ray, go ahead if you wanna say something briefly,
Can I clearly some things? Because like the gentleman just said it, the door problems. Yes, we did open, but we are open, not doing when we have a music. And then also we have a second door, because they keep closed. And then another problems, the gentleman says they came up to looking for me. I never see him to look at me. And then another issues, we did check out the song. I don't know how to explain to that. There's like a desert word, check out. We did it twice. Yeah, and then I do believe Tom did it once. The result is get exactly the same like what we get. The 135 make a noise more than what we make.
no, I get it, we went
And
through
then
all that.
Also, I want to clarify, I'm not trying to, I respect all the neighbors, but if any issues, we can work out. But just like, to me, this is a commercial zoning, and then you're living right in front of a 135.
All right, but.
So if any happens, we can work it out.
Right,
I'm
so
not
let's,
saying
yeah, hopefully, let's all agree to live up to the commitments made in the past and the, you
Yeah,
know,
but
and the
just like
agreements and.
I mean, to us, like, I feel like
Speak into the
not fair.
microphone.
Yeah, I mean, to us, I think that's not fair to us. If anything issues or noise, I get it. If we get a panic or something, we
All
get
right,
it.
so just try to resolve it. If there's complaints, we'll
Yeah.
look into it and
Yeah, I
do the
did-
best we can, but.
Yeah, I did follow whatever Tom let us, do it. But just like, yeah,
Okay.
if anything like something we can fix or work out, yeah, let us know. But just something, because entertainment, we're not having it every day. The one we've been posed, we only have the band, we only have 3 times a month, sometimes 4 times
So we'll review that
a
as well,
week.
I think we
Ray.
need to
I think-
review
And then-
that, and then we'll.
Even though every time we only have a 2.5 hour, and then right on top of that, we have the middle of that they have a couple break, cause we also like we have the desert check every time we're going to check it out, make sure to know,
Yeah.
know about the neighbors,
So we're gonna review the entertainment license.
Yeah,
And
but
I
it's
think
like,
we're-
to
I
me-
think what we're gonna have to do, Ray, is sounds like we're gonna have to intervene between the neighbors and yourself here,
Yeah,
so.
We'll have
I
to
got
do
that
that.
part of, just like if there has any issues, please, just come to me, talk to, we figure out,
Yeah.
All
we
right,
work it
point
out.
taken, Ray.
But to me, to me, that's like not fair for us. Yeah, we've been go over all the time, and we've
We'll just
been-
comply with what we've talked about in the past in your license, and we'll take it from there.
I know, I got it. But just like
Okay,
thanks.
thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. So I think we're ready to move
motion.
on this. Yeah.
I move that we approve the change of ownership, the change of officer stock and ownership of Sing Sing Inc. DBA Hanto from Raymond Jiang to Maxu Hayang.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Motion's been made in second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. So congratulations, we've approved your change.
Thank you very much.
That's it.
Good luck,
Thank you.
Dutch. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right.
Check to see if the folks from,
Yeah.
they might be here from Ashland Fish and Game.
The Fish and Game people here yet? No? Yes, okay. So are you ready to present? We're a little early, but are you ready to come up and present?
Because that's not a hearing, right?
No, just
We can do that, right?
request, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, come on up and just come to the microphone, introduce yourself, and make your presentation. This is a one-day license, a liquor license, right?
Yep.
Did we go- Yes, go ahead.
I'm Dawn Harris, bar manager at the Fish.
Oh, yes, we met you.
And he's wants to have a party and for a day license out in the field. So I'll let him tell you what he wants.
Hi, Scott McDonald. We're having a party at the Fish. It's a motorcycle event. And what we're trying to do is we're gonna have a band in the pavilion. So we wanna be able to rope off, use the field in case they're off the road, that we can have the whole field, have the, stage and stuff in the pavilion, and use the field for access.
And the field you're referring to is the softball field?
Correct.
Okay.
The fence,
Just for the
yeah.
folks out there that don't know that the area, there is a softball field next to the pavilion.
Correct.
And it's already fenced off, right? There's a
Yes,
fence
correct.
there.
Fenced in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna rope off the front of it, so we have exit to the field itself, so it's directly from the fishing game to the field. Same on the other end, by the pavilion to the gate, so everything is stayed inside there, so nobody else can come out and beyond.
And how many people roughly are you estimating?
250 maybe?
Okay.
Good.
And you've already sat
It's a
down
big
with
event.
Chief Alfano with
Correct.
respect to all the
Yes,
things that need to be addressed? Okay.
correct.
The chief have any commentary?
I always do. We have not met with representatives of the Fish and Game. We would intend to, and we would actually like to do a site visit there. We did meet with Mr. McDonald, a very productive meeting. My understanding is that they would like to have alcohol out in the actual field area. The license only covers right now the patio area and inside the club, and the band under the pavilion. We reviewed past history where bands were at the pavilion, and they did not seem to be a problem, and we've worked out with Mr. McDonald a communication method, whereas we would have direct phone numbers to call if, say, the music needed to be lowered and responsible parties. We do have a concern for accessibility or transfer of alcohol out to the public roadway, because there is no fence, there's no access from the field over to that area. We talked with them about installing snow fence, the orange plastic snow fence. So what we would like to see, before we would give it our thumbs up, would be a written diagram of where the fencing would be, where representatives would be to prevent and sort of monitor any alcohol transfer out to the public roadway, and actually see where the brand is set up, which way the speakers would be faced. And I think we could do that on a site visit as well with the representatives of both the club and the hosting group. So I think it can be worked out, but we do have some concerns, and we actually want to see a written plan on that, actual diagrams of that, so we would have a reference to go by. I would require them to have at least one police detail out by the street as well for traffic control, which we did talk about, and they did not have an issue with that, as far as exit and egress from Ponderosa Road. So I think if we can schedule a site visit with them, we can work out those details.
So we do not have another meeting between now and June the 1st, so we're gonna have to do this contingent on
On that site.
you
that site.
successfully
Working with
working it out with
department.
the chief,
Correct,
right?
okay.
The other thing is the notification of the immediate neighbors. Have you notified them? Do you intend to notify them? I don't know, how close the closest house is, but there are some houses that are on Corderville Road, obviously, and
And
they
Pleasant.
probably should be notified, prior to the event.
The event's from 1 to 8, so I don't know if that'll be for the time-wise. will
Yeah,
it affect
shouldn't
them
be,
or-
shouldn't be a problem, but I think just general courtesy is probably
Correct.
good,
Yeah.
good practice to,
Okay.
Is this a ticket event? Like, what is this event about?
The event's just it's an alliance group, and we do plan on donating some money towards the Ashland,
Oh,
the,
About that. Ashland Lions?
The fund for the donation.
Oh, the
for
emergency fund.
Emergency fund,
Okay.
correct.
Very nice.
Very
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Sounds
I'd
good.
like to make a donation to that for
Okay.
appreciation.
So what's the what's the relationship of the Fish and Game to your, what's your, are you just hosting this, Don? What's your
Just, they asked me, like I do all the parties and
A
stuff,
rental.
so.
and is there an organization? What's the organization?
The organization, the Slaughter Brothers Motorcycle Club.
Oh, the motorcycle.
It's a yes,
Okay.
it's all motorcycle events, yes.
Okay.
We've had parties before and never
All
had a
right.
problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
We've
we've been
had,
having
for
them
5, 6 years, we've had 14
Okay,
parties anyway.
so we've done this
Oh, okay.
before.
We've never had a,
You're just expanding it out,
Correct,
make it a little
correct.
bit bigger event. and
Yeah.
Oh,
use
rather
the
than just a
field and-
patio.
instead of going, like, what we're doing is having everyone come down at once, we're having a national this year because every week we have to go somewhere else. Now we're just trying to do one a year, and now it gives, all the weekends off. So next year it will be somewhere else.
Okay.
All right.
Any other concerns, Chief, from your?
Well, our biggest concerns will be noise, as far as motorcycles are allowed. As far as the access and egress, they do intend to, close it at 8 o'clock, and we would
That's
ask
good.
for a prompt clearing of the area at 8 o'clock. We would need, obviously, their guarantee that the public roadway is not interfered with, that goes out to where the DPW is, and the pound. And,
Poor animals.
yeah,
Yeah.
the poor animals,
They may enjoy it, you never know.
right.
Okay.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So
All right,
question for
thanks.
Dawn, regarding, you've provided your tip certification. Are you the only server for that event?
No, we
Get a
have,
list of
there's
people.
others. I
Is
got,
that whole list is,
yeah, some of those
this
people
whole
don't even
list
work there
is-
anymore. Some of those people don't work there anymore. I have
Okay.
other people and everybody's tip certified.
Okay.
And I'll be sending, Susan's
Yeah,
gonna
we don't
get
have
all
that
those
copy, though.
before then.
All the beer and liquor will be served from the Fish's Game itself. Nothing, nowhere else will be sold
okay.
Okay.
at the
Okay.
fish itself.
All right. So any other further questions or thoughts on this?
And just-
Okay. So I
you-
would
And you're
ask
gonna
for a motion.
monitor the folks going back and forth from the cars, so they're not,
After, we usually corner off anyways.
yeah, that's what I
The town
thought. but
gives us
just-
the cones, we put them out there. We always keep that roadway clear.
Will there be bike escorts in the front of Ponderosa Road like there was the last time? I take it won't be, right? There won't be guys on motorcycles up front on Ponderosa Road?
Oh, at Ponderosa Road?
Yeah,
Or coming in, maybe blocking traffic or something, those, we have the detail there.
okay.
That's all, just people coming in,
Just
the back corner
just
there,
making
so-
sure. Be
Yeah.
Jenny, just making sure.
Okay.
Okay. Be Jenny.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Yes.
I move that we approve the one-day license to the Ashland Fish and Game to host the spring bike event on June 1st, 2019, from 1 to 8 p.m., understanding that everyone must remain within the fenced-in area and with approval from a site visit by the Ashland Police Department and police officer agreement on site. Does that cover everything?
So, sounds good. Second.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, none.
Is there a
Motion
rain
carries.
date?
No,
No, okay, so rain or shine.
rain or shine. If not,
Okay.
we'll go inside.
Okay,
That's what the option, it's supposed to be nice June.
let's
June
hope
1st,
so,
I heard.
let's hope
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Hope so.
All right. Thank you.
We ordered
Thanks,
it.
Don.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I think that takes care of those. So, are there folks that want to talk to us about the Eversource
I think we
project?
should wait until Susan Nickel gets here.
Is that the consensus of people? You want to keep waiting and watching us in action?
Okay.
Okay.
So let's wait for Susan.
Yeah, let's
All right.
wait.
Okay, so where are we? You want to do an update,
Town manager
Michael?
priority project update?
Go through that?
Sure.
Sure, okay. So starting off with the Rail Transit District, as you know, I'm pleased to announce to everybody that we have completed our transaction with Bob Gaynor. He did agree to to our interpretation of the reverter deed for the Nyakall property, and so he has signed that. Steve has signed on behalf of the board, so that has been consummated and it is over. We also met with the YMCA a couple of weeks ago just to talk about the status of planning on how we're going to move that project forward. And I expect the community to hear more about the YMCA over the summer. We'll be talking about having community ambassadors, not just in Ashland, but also in Hopkinton and Holliston. And then also doing really kind of a needs analysis of the community and seeing what particular needs our three communities have and what ways the Y can serve them. So that's exciting. We're looking forward to moving forward with that. Any questions on that before I move forward?
We're good.
Okay. With our public safety building, we're still negotiating the design and engineering contract with HKT. Jen's been working on that. Hopefully that will be completed soon. Downtown improvements. One new development I wanted to let everybody know about is we're actually going to be meeting with the downtown business community on May 20th, so this coming Monday, to talk about the potential impacts of the downtown project on those businesses and ways that we can mitigate them. So
Where is that gonna be, Michael?
we believe it's going to be in town hall. Right now, it's scheduled for town hall.
Okay.
Um,
Evening,
in
afternoon?
the evening, 7
Okay.
p.m.
7 p.m., okay.
We will have, Doug will be there from DPW. We'll also have Bill Paley from BSC, our project engineer, as well.
What's the date of that, Mike?
Monday, the 20th. So this was put together rather
Yeah, 'cause
quickly.
there's other stuff that night.
Also want to let you know that we are in the process of bidding out the water main portion of the project, and hopefully that will be completed soon. Any questions on downtown improvements before we move on? Okay. Townwide strategic plan, we're trying to finish up a draft of the housing section, and so we'll have the board review that before we move forward. And then the Warren District. I wanted to let everybody know that the bids have come in for demolition of the Warren Barn. Now, we're at this point in time still determining its eligibility for the historic or the National Register, and seeing what impacts rebuilding that and reconstructing that barn would have on the potential to put it on the historic register. So I don't expect we'll do anything. We won't move forward with that bid until we have that clarified. Also, just to let you know, we reached out to the town of Medway. Those of you that are familiar with the town of Medway know that they have the Thayer Homestead, which is a project that they had completed partially using CPC funds. And we see that maybe as a template or something that we can take bits and pieces from to help work on the Hall House, the Warren Barn, and the Valentine property. So looking forward to that. So, David, do you have any other updates on it? Okay, thanks. Also on 22 Elliott Street, we'll let you know that we're in the process of installing a fire alarm system to bring it up to code. It also has exit signs, fire extinguishers, so things that make it compliant for
So
public
we
meeting
could
space.
possibly use those as a meeting location
Potentially,
at some
yes.
point? Okay.
That's good.
All right,
Thank you. Any
Okay.
other updates, Michael?
that's it.
So I think we can go.
This one here, review the awards.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Are you ready to do that? So we're gonna go to old new business, review the awards for the BAA spring grants. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Rob. So we had an initial pass through our grant program, and we allocated a substantial amount of grants at that point, but we had some questions for maybe half a dozen other requests. We needed a little bit more information, which we did receive from 4 of them. So tonight, we're doing a second batch of grant requests for the Ashland Sustainability Committee, the Friends of the Ashland Library, Julie Nardone, and the Warren School. So they've all received some amount of funding based on their request. So that was our,
Ashland is United? Is that part of the-
Ashland is United is,
That's part of the public
that's part of the
library?
Friends of the Library.
Friends of the
Yeah,
Library, that's what I thought, I just wanted to.
mentioned to Jane, right? So those 4 have been
At
assigned,
our last
so,
meeting,
yeah.
yeah, very
Yep.
good.
So-
All right,
I
thank
move
you.
that we accept the recommendations of the BAA subcommittee, which includes grants for those that Steve stated.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, none. Awards are granted. Thank you. Thank you all for that and your efforts
Thanks,
for
Rob.
that, and thanks, Steve, for going through
And I
that.
want to thank Steve and Rob for their
Yes.
diligent work in getting all that done. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. And I'm kind of, let's talk about geocaching. 'cause it's-
Geocaching.
Yeah,
Geocaching.
Catching, okay, so,
that's
Is
the
there s-
Yolanda topic.
I'm willing to
is
talk
it?
about it.
Sure,
Yeah.
let's go ahead. So, just the background that we put it on the agenda, we've been getting requests from someone who, to,
For a couple people, actually.
has it been two different
It's been-
people? To,
Michael
it-
knows about it too.
does he? And I guess for want of a better person, I've been kind of emailing them and approving their hiding things in the town of Ashland. And, so that's what they've been doing. So I don't know if Yolanda, so we put it
Sure.
on
Don't want to go
to
there.
discuss.
Describe what geocaching is.
I will,
Yeah.
I will. So for those of you who don't know, geocaching is basically a treasure hunt. And what happens is you use coordinates, and you can have an app on your phone. When we first started, it was actually you used a specific device that you then plugged in the coordinates, and you would go hiking or you'd go for a walk, and you'd follow the coordinates in a trail, and it would get you to this cache or this box usually, where there would be trinkets, or if you were the first to find, there might be a special coin. And it's just a way to get people into the woods or into different parts of a city that you've never been in. And it's really fun to do with kids. They love going out and finding the box and exchanging their treasure for another treasure. And it was much more popular probably in the 2000s to 2010. Like, I mean, I know for our family, we would go camping in New Hampshire and we would cache everywhere. When we traveled to different cities, we found geocaches in Las Vegas. We have found geocaches in Florida. When we were on a cruise 13 years ago, every island that we hit, we would go geocaching. And what's fun is it takes you to places that you might not go, which for the fact that people want to hide these geocaches, and they're very small, sometimes really small, like, you know, a pill bottle with tape on it on a string that you then have to, like, it's on a hill. It's unbelievable how ingenious some of these people get in these hides.
I hide all mine in the refrigerator.
Oh, there you go. But it's a way to get people to our community. If we're allowing these people to hide these geocaches, as I said, it's not intrusive to your woods or your town forest, you know, your town forest or any place. And it's just a way to get people into your community who like to find these geocaches. So I have been encouraging that we allow this, just because I think it's a great way to have people explore the great open space. And even, I mean, there was a cache on the sign of the Telecron building for a while.
Oh, that's interesting.
There's been caches on, I think there was one in not in Stone Park, but like in different, like on buildings or things like that. And sometimes they're virtual caches. We did a virtual cache that like started in New Bedford and wound up here in Ashland.
Yeah.
So it's just fun, and I think
Yeah.
we should certainly allow this and
Right,
Um,
and it's been
encourage
nice
it.
that people have been emailing and
Yes,
asking
and
permission.
asking for
'cause
permission,
I
yeah.
suppose they could have just done it and who would
Yeah.
know?
We should probably, since we seem to be getting quite a few of them recently, at least set up a mechanism. I don't think we have to approve
Every
these
one of them.
locations.
I need to check it out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe we just, refer it to the
Something.
town manager's
Office
office
to
and let,
just review it.
let our office then just
Yeah.
approve it that
See
way.
if
And
there's
I know
any
there's some of the
particular
locations
issues. Yeah.
earlier, when that gentleman was looking for a location, he was looking to be near the railroad tracks, not on the tracks, but near the tracks.
Right.
And you have to be careful, because if
Sure.
you've seen these people, and the Pokemon phenom a few years ago, they were using that as a geocache.
Pokemon Go, yeah.
Oh my
It's
God.
That was
It was
different.
incredible.
You played that, right, Jim?
Downtown was invaded by people on their cell phones, and they were just looking at what they were doing, and not just walking, but looking at their cell phones.
Sounds like
They're
me.
walking in the roadway, it was incredible. I'm going, oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah,
George
the-
Orwell
the-
all over again.
The difference between geocaching and that is, it's not like they're just gonna wind up on a sidewalk, right? With Pokemon Go, like, I remember at one point, when my girls were doing it, we had some in our backyard, because that was a virtual thing. This is typically, some of it's virtual, but a lot of it's a specific place and a specific location that they have to get to. They're not just walking around on the sidewalk.
I just would like to make sure that people,
Right.
when they hide them, if they're hiding it on someone's property or whatever, they've got the permission,
Oh, yeah.
whatever, you know?
Oh,
and
yeah,
just so
they're-
that it's not,
So,
you know.
public, and I guess, Michael, is there any, so if it's public property, they really should ask permission,
Yes.
right? And, we should just think about if there's any obvious safety issues and, you know. But, do you see any other issues with just, and I wanna thank those folks for actually emailing us and taking the initiative to do that, cause it's good to do that.
Yeah,
And,
I don't see any issues with the locations that have been proposed. I can't say that for future locations, but what I would do is I would encourage them to maybe put together one list
Right.
and send it at once, as opposed to
If
sending
it's the
multiple
same person
emails, yeah.
submitting, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you. So we're not gonna take any
We'll
formal
just
action
refer
on
them
that.
to
Just
the
refer them
town
to town
manager and
manager's office.
selectman's
And
office.
I'll lose one of my
And if we
primary.
see Rob walking around, we know
Yeah.
that he's got a head start.
Right. All right, so should we,
There's always something special for first to find, so.
This is true.
should we do the legislative delegation file home rule petition to establish an economic development special revenue account per town meeting vote?
Do
You
that.
ready to do that?
Um,
Somebody let me know when and if Susan comes here, so we can up this. Go ahead, Michael.
All right, thank you. So what we need to do now is, based on the
Okay.
town meeting vote of May 1st, the Board of Selectmen need to actually vote to file the home rule petition for the creation of this special revenue account for the Economic Development Fund utilizing the meals tax with the legislature. So for those of you that are not familiar with it or were not at town meeting voted to set aside the meals tax, or the funding that we get through the meals tax, for a special revenue account dedicated exclusively to economic development. Again, since the way this is structured, it has to be done through special legislation. So again, I think the vote is actually in the back of the packet,
Mhm.
your actual vote that you need to take. Once you make that vote, we will get it sent off to Representative Lewis. Senate President Spilka actually can't file legislation in her current position, so we'll need to have Representative Lewis do that on our behalf.
Okay. Are there questions about this, or?
Nope.
There's a suggested motion, I
Yep,
think, in your packet.
got it.
Does someone?
Ready?
Yep.
I move to petition the general court for special legislation entitled Town of Ashland Meals Tax Distribution to allow the town to create a special revenue fund for economic development and appropriate the local meals tax revenue into the fund for the purpose of economic development activities.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Thank you, Michael. All right, let's do an update on the legal evaluation and contract. Is that, just to review what's happened, annually, we review the town council's contract, and, the board members evaluate, that contract, and, we did that evaluation and handed it in, and Michael and I, had a conversation with Lisa of, Mead, Tallerman, today, is that it? Yeah.
Lisa Mead of Mead, Tallerman, and Costa.
Ah, Costa, don't forget Adam, yes.
Get at 'em.
And, and I'll just do, I guess, a brief summary. You've all, I think, got the packet. So the four evaluations were relatively close. The evaluations have a number of questions in them, and we had some comments, and so based on that, well, I think I'll turn it over to Michael, kind of summarize the comments. Generally, it was a favorable evaluation, as you can see. Actually, we were relatively close in our evaluation, so, with some issues, and if, Michael, you just want to talk about those.
Ooh, sorry.
Sure. So, yes, so town council quantitatively is evaluated based on three categories: board, staff, support, and relations, legal administration and approach, and also public relations and communications. Council received an average of a 3.5 score. That's based on a 5-point scale, so above average, a little bit below outstanding. As Rob said, most of the comments were fairly consistent. I think the one thing that was really evident was the need for more formal communication in the form of quarterly updates or more consistent formal communication to the entire board, and not necessarily just individual members of the board. So that was the one takeaway. And Attorney Mead, she recognized that, and that is something that we talk about each year, and we continue to make strides towards that, and we'll continue to do that. The other thing that we talked about and spent some time talking about is just the access of staff and boards and committees to town council. Previously, everything went through the town manager's office, so you would actually have to, if you were a board or a committee or town staff, you would need to submit a request to the town manager's office to see legal counsel. And I don't know if that was necessarily to control things as much as it was just to make sure that the selectmen were informed as to what the issues were going on that were being discussed with town council. We've kind of gotten away from that. In some ways that's been beneficial because that's led some of our, I think, boards and committees and staff to avert some kind of litigation by getting ahead of it. On the other hand, there are some times when we find out that there's been some things happening legally, which we find out about almost after the fact. And fortunately, nothing really negative or bad, but there's the potential there. So we talked about trying to find that balance between, not necessarily putting a stranglehold on boards and committees and staffs to talk to staff, but also making sure that we're informed.
And I think we thought that I guess the practice has been for a while, the Wednesdays, that is at least this time here, and that seems to be working out pretty well.
Yep.
And the other, I don't know if people wanted to expound on their comments a little bit. The one thing I said, I'd be open to more kind of, I guess, assertive kind of interpretations of the law, I guess, and that may or may not be shared by other people. But I think generally their advice has been sound and reasonable, and we've kept them very busy, fortunately or unfortunately, over the past few years, and with a number of major issues. So,
Rob, if I may interject, Michael, I appreciate what you said. One of the concerns and one of the reasons why we requested, the board at the time requested anybody needing legal counsel's advice, they would just pick up the phone and call legal counsel. Well, as soon as that happens, the clock is ticking.
right.
The meter's going. And if you don't know about it and you want to know, try and keep a handle on legal fees and legal service fees, we have no idea who's calling and why. So we came up with a form to fill out, so that way we had a better understanding of who, when, where, and how much. So, but if it wasn't signed off, then they couldn't. But I understand it may have helped some litigation from happening, but at the same token, if you have people just calling up haphazardly, I mean, you have to have some structure. That's the whole reason why you have
Lisa had an
government.
interesting example of that, how it works out. Like she said, she got a call from, let's say Doug, and she wouldn't, and if it wasn't urgent, she wouldn't actually do anything with it until she was back on the clock on Wednesdays, and then she'd deal with Doug's issue. So to go to your point, even though Doug didn't formally get permission, I presume, but he felt the need to call her and alert her or something or ask her, and she was able to just work on it, presumably on time that she would have already charged, given that she's here Wednesdays from X to X, So that's the same question I asked. Like, anybody start calling the clock, start running? The answer is sometimes yes, but often no, right? Is that so?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, and I don't think we want to get into the practice of every time there's like a bidding issue, we want to know about that, or a potential bidding issue, because there are like 2 or 3 of those a day.
Sounds like there might need to be a little bit more of a happy medium, so it's not as restrictive as it used to be, but maybe not just as open as it seems to be now.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
look at how we can manage that.
the way I see it is like, I shouldn't be finding out about an issue by looking at the bill and
Right.
saying, oh,
Right.
wow,
Exactly.
this is.
And neither should this board, because we have
Right.
the responsibility of 2 groups. One is town council and you. And that's, it's important that we know what's going on with town council, not just periodically, but all the time.
And do we think that committee members have a good understanding of when they can access town council and when, have there been issues or problems? I know we talked about certain committees do need to consult with her on a pretty regular basis, I think, especially
Yeah.
the ones that are more legalistic.
Yeah, I think one uses counsel on a fairly regular
Yeah.
basis, and it's necessary. I will have to say, there are some committees that are very cognizant of utilizing council's time, and will, give us a heads up if there's, or ask permission.
I
if
would,
there's
I would
something.
ask that any committee that's gonna use it at least let you know.
Yeah.
Not necessarily just for permit, but to let you know that they're gonna be picking up the phone. That might be helpful. I mean, shoot you an email or something. That way you're aware of it at least, so you're not seeing it after you get the bill.
Well, wouldn't it be helpful to know, what the purpose of the call is? Because if it's something that can wait until she's here on a Wednesday,
That's
that may be,
possible too.
that may be something to consider.
And I think Lisa's, and maybe that's Michael, something can discuss with
Right.
her. If she's getting calls and starting to spend time on stuff that's not appropriate or not approved, then I think we need to. On the other hand, if she's noting it and people are dropping in and talking to her when she's here, which I think is probably a good plan,
Mhm.
then I think that's
Part
good.
of what Wednesdays are for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that, I'm just scanning the audience, let's see if Susan's here. One of the things I will say that I think is important, and I think council has evolved, at least since I've been here, is the ability to provide the Board of Selectmen with unbiased and independent advice and chances and risks and things of that nature, and then letting the board decide
Yeah. I think that's
how
important.
you want to proceed. Sometimes you might want to go against traditional or
Right.
kind of conventional legal wisdom.
Yeah.
But it's important that you know the pros and
Brilliant,
cons
Steve.
of each. And
Right.
Yeah, I've always thought, and I know I've put it in the evaluations every year that we've done them, is that I think, it's just not Lisa Mead. It's a firm,
Yeah.
and I think they interact with, as an example, the planning board interacts more with another principal of the firm. And I think it's important that we get some feedback from some other boards, and I think we attempt to get some feedback from staff that have the most contact, such as the planner, and, their feedback as well as their experience.
So
Good
you're
point.
saying as we go into this next year,
Yeah,
Look
I
at
would
doing
suggest
that.
we look at expanding it a little bit,
Yeah.
and,
Certainly, Conservation Commission had a lot to do with it. There's-
yeah, so ZBA, conservation, obviously planning,
Yeah.
So would you recommend possibly giving them a similar form to fill out?
we
or-
could talk about it and maybe something a little bit more modified than
Than
ours,
right.
Yeah.
but, we
And-
can figure it out.
Can we look at this, can we do something about the guardian angel sentence? Because I don't have it in front of me, but that's the one, because I think that's kind of an odd question. This is, if I remember it from heart, it's something like, does town council serve as a does the town council member of the management team or see themselves as the quote guardian angel of the law? So to me, that's kind of an odd question.
I think the intent, though, is to,
Yeah.
yeah.
does town council provide you unbiased advice, but then at the same time, when given direction, do they
Yeah.
give you?
Let's state what we
yeah.
mean, and
Yeah.
not just, what does that mean to be part of the team? That means you're gonna go along no matter whatever screwball thing we're talking about, so. I just ask that we kind of think about and restate that one for the future. But-
Okay.
So the process on this is that Michael will prepare,
She's here.
yeah, okay, thank you. Michael will prepare for our next meeting, the 1 year, and it's a 1 year by pretty much our own bylaws, right? So, and we will take, I presume, a formal vote at that time with the terms of the contract. Michael, were there any kind of financial or other issues or
No.
contractual issues we care
No,
to
there's no
talk
change
about?
in like the rate or anything.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
All right, thank you. So that takes care of that. All right, so I think Susan's here. Susan, we've been waiting 2 hours for you. I'm just kidding. So if you can get a
Don't
feel
want to put
guilty,
you on the
go
spot or
ahead, yeah.
anything, but, yeah.
So, all right, so, we had early, this is, we'll do the Eversource update. We had early given the folks an update. So I don't know, did people want to address us about this? Is that why you're here? If you want to come up and identify yourself? Anybody?
Oh, okay.
Well, we kind of did the update, but did you want us to do it again?
We did an update quite early on.
Yeah, so let me just say, the board has made a public statement to the FSB, and we talked about the schedule, the deliberations going on, and the fact that we've met with town council and will provide a brief. And that we've made this board has made a public statement, and filed it with the FSB, and we'll be pursuing the items in this public statement, which, to summarize quickly, is, we're asking that this not proceed until these questions have been answered. They haven't, they need to make a more solid case for the need of the expansion project in general. And then there needs to be more details on the alternatives so that we can have the best, should the project go forward, that we can have the best alternative possible. So that's basically, I believe, just to, in summary, the board feels that further information and evaluation is required before this project can be approved. We request that the siting board require the applicant to provide such a response, and that sufficient time be provided to review and evaluate the additional information. We have seen no authoritative evidence that the installation of the expanded replacement pipe needs to proceed on the proposed schedule, and therefore time must be allowed to thoroughly address the many questions that have been raised. So that's basically our position. And basically we ask that it not go forward until those questions have been resolved. So that's our, and just briefly to review the schedule, we're preparing a brief to present the interests as we interpret them of the town and the residents, and that's going forward. And I think Michael went into the fact that there'll be further processes, response to their brief, and that we're not sure when exactly the decision will be made. I think we're looking several months down the road. So, and again, I thank people for their input. I think it is important to comment and make your voices known in this process as we move along. So, thank you. So, is that, Mark, can we see if anyone else, I thought you already gave us.
I want to be real quick.
Okay.
I want to be quick, because I know they can have a lot more than I'm going to say about this.
Okay,
People to line up.
Okay.
yeah, but no one seems to be lying. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Okay. First of all, thank you for repeating what you just said. And doing my participation earlier, I'm saying again, the two towns, Hopkins and Ashland, should work together, all boards, so that both citizens of both towns will know what's going on. And the State House should get involved, both towns themselves, and get input from every board they can get from this. And to have a no would be the best thing, but to be from that sitting board to where it is now, I'd be really interested of the Susan woman. What's her
She gets to decide if we're gonna have the pipeline or not.
She's here representing Senator Spilka, and she's
She's a
listening.
listener.
She's here to listen.
She's not here to comment.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. I'll bite my tongue on that, from who she's representing then. Okay, so from her listening to having Karen Spirko have an idea what's going on. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Mark. And so, yeah, people want to speak, I suggest you just line up and give us an idea of how many people want to speak and how long. So that'd be great. Thank you. And you can just identify yourself. You don't need to give your home address.
Hi, my name is
They don't.
Diane
No,
Ring. I live
the chair
across the
is
street
ruled.
from Rob.
Oh, we know they're not
So,
residents.
Doesn't
I'm
matter.
just curious, if the siting board approves this, is there a contingency plan of like, would there be any sort of appeal that the town would be willing to undertake?
No, let him
Sure,
answer.
go ahead, Michael,
Let him
if you
answer.
wanna.
Let him answer.
No, I think what there, depending on what the appeal or what the decision is, we would, I think, have the potential to appeal that. We would just have to see what the decision is and what recourse we would have.
Thanks, that's nice to know, thank you.
Yes.
Brandy Kinsman. I was curious as to the final brief process and if Eversource is, the expectations are that they will respond to our concerns and our questions in that final brief period, or are they going to wait for the siting board to force them to provide more details to us?
Complete conjecture on my part, but I believe that they will probably wait until they're compelled to provide that information.
Thank you.
I do think what their reply brief will do is actually challenge some of the statements that we make and some of the points that we raise.
Hi, I'm Chuck Lids. So the question I had, first of all, I want to thank the board and the staff. I think you've done a great job. I really do. So my question about this is, they have an easement, to have a pipeline there. Do they also have an easement to dig another trench at the same time? I don't understand.
So my understanding, as a layperson, so they have an easement that says they can,
Have a pipeline.
they can put in a pipeline, and I assume that part of that is, part of it would be that it goes, I think it does talk about it needs to be in a trench, and it needs to stay underground, and there's one pipe, basically. That's the gist of the right-of-way.
Right, but they've got the pipeline, and now they want to dig, I keep doing that, I'm sorry.
Well, they can work in the right-of-way.
What?
They can work in the right-of-way. I think the issue has been if does the fact that they're putting down a new pipe and leaving the old one then violate the right-of-way?
Yeah.
Well,
But
yeah,
we're all
even-
lay persons when it comes to
Even
that.
does as I understand it, what they said is, well, it's not a pipeline unless it's filled.
So you read the response, right, to their
Right.
questions?
I
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that, okay, they've got a pipeline there. Do they have a right to dig a trench for another pipeline? I mean, is that part of their, I'm looking
What's
for a
being questioned.
technicality to
Yeah.
keep them
Yes.
from, and I think we ought to push
And
it.
that's-
The other thing I wanted to say is,
And you're urging the town follow up on that technicality? Is that
well,
what you're saying?
I think it's at least worth considering.
Well, I think it's an interesting, because I read that several times, their reply to the questions from the siting board. And, they talk about their ability to repair and to modify and divert and whatever language they used. And, they talk about a pipeline versus a transmission line and all of these,
Yeah,
legalese
so,
distinctions, right?
yeah, and so I'm looking for a legalese distinction
Yeah.
that we can,
Good luck.
The one thing, Chuck, I will say is that is a landowner issue largely.
there is a
Yes.
landowner issue, and then the question is, would the board, if a landowner or multiple landowners wanted to contest this, would the board be supportive of that?
Well, actually, the town is actually a landowner on a couple of these parcels. So
Okay.
I think it's safe to say the board's keeping all of their options open.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Anyway,
Chuck.
I'm
Thanks,
very
Chuck.
appreciative.
Thank you.
Hi, Roberta Silliman, 28 Woodridge Lane.
She does it by reflex.
I'm here on behalf of the Ashland Open Space and Recreation Committee, which met last night, and as one of the items on their agenda, they talked about the Eversource pipeline. So I just want to briefly read a motion that we passed last night so that people understand the position of our committee, and hopefully we'll get some inspiration or information from this motion that passed. Eversource's preferred route for the pipeline would impact existing open space by going through wetlands, wildlife habitats, and Ashland State Park. Because the Open Space and Recreation Committee's mission is to preserve and protect Ashland's natural resources and the environment, The committee is against the proposed pipeline project for the following 3 mission-related reasons. 1, Eversource has made no credible case for the need for this project. 2, there are grave climate change concerns regarding construction of the pipeline, which is a fossil fuel infrastructure. And 3, there are grave environmental concerns for the wetlands and wildlife habitats. This motion was presented at our meeting last night and passed by a vote of 5-0-1 with 1 abstention, and that was Greg Wands, who's a member of our committee and a member of the Conservation Commission, which is in the process of permitting, listening to permitting arguments for this project. So he recused himself and left the room during the discussion and did not participate in the vote.
Are you planning to submit that to the siting board?
Yes, thank you.
And I did want to comment that Chuck submitted what I thought was a really interesting argument to them just recently about, I meant to ask you about this, about the, from an organization talking about gas supplies in New England. But I thought that kind of thing is an effective kind of thing to send them and say, hey, so anyway. Yes, Joel.
Joel Arbeitman, Woodridge Lane. A couple of months ago, I spent a just thrilling day. I must have spent 8 hours looking for past decisions of the siting board. And I really couldn't find any decision where they turned down an application from a utility. I found numerous examples. Cape Wind was one of the examples that everybody's familiar with, or many are, where they conditioned it. They said, well, you know, you can't just go hog wild here. You've got to meet some, you know, the local residents or the communities are raising some very valid concerns. But in the end, these things were permitted. Now, my agenda here is to talk about climate change relative to the pipeline. And I have no, this is a dead issue here. And we have governance, structural problems. I'm really appreciative that our representative from Senator Spilka's office is here. I would suggest that we go further and try to contact Governor Baker, who has charged all of the state's utilities with the, that they need to come up with a climate change plan. I mean, you know, it's kind of common sense at this point. Our board, I had a lengthy conversation with our conservation agent right before this meeting, and their charge on the Conservation Commission, their hands are tied behind their back. They need to talk about this specific pipeline and that specific wetlands. You try to make that broader in talking about climate change and its impact on wetlands. I mean, the studies that are out there are endless talking about the effect of climate change on wetlands. Well, that's not okay for them. They can't go there. They would be sued. If they came back and said, we're gonna deny, you know, we're gonna turn this application down because it's gonna, climate change is gonna be made worse. This pipeline is 4 times the capacity of the current pipeline. And they would probably lose their case. I mean, and they don't see that as their charge. So what I'm asking for here, beyond just the pipeline hearing, is to look in terms of empowering our local boards, this would include the planning board as well, to be able to start addressing this. I mean, I don't know what could be a more serious existential issue than climate change, and our boards are being confronted with to make a ruling on an expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure, which this pipeline request is, and they can't even address it. They cannot comment on it, and it's beyond the scope of their authority. So I would look to our legislative representatives, you know, Senator Spilka and Representative Lewis, and I would look to the governor's office. Maybe we can pull in some of our Republican friends from the Republican Town Committee and try to make some contacts here, not just for this pipeline, but in addition to that, a longer-term look at what empowerment we need so that we can start getting serious about climate change. If this goes to the EFSB as it is, I'm very concerned that it's gonna, they'll meet all the requests, they'll get more data, you know, they'll go through the bureaucratic process, which is their job, and in the end, you know, those of us who don't want to see any pipeline in Ashland, we're going to lose. We're not playing on a level playing field at this point, and I think something needs to be changed. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Any comments?
So, my name's Adam Elbert. First, I wanted to say thank you to the board for obtaining intervenor status so that we can even have this conversation. Otherwise, we'd be dead in the water. Thank you so much for taking the initiative on that and putting us in a position where we have a voice at the table. As an engineer, I try to solve problems, so I think there are a lot of opportunities for us to investigate that I've certainly submitted to the EFSB, but I'd like to put in front of the board. The first is that there has to be a demonstrated need for this pipeline to go forward. I don't know about you, but I don't trust Eversource's data and their interpretation of it that demonstrates a need according to them. I have put forward to the EFSB that an independent evaluator should be appointed to actually look at the data. Okay, you know, we have Professor McKenna from Framingham State who says there's absolutely no need here. We have Eversource who says yes, there is. How about having an independent evaluator come in and take a look at the data and give us an opinion that doesn't necessarily have any particular bias associated with it, so that maybe we can actually figure out, is there a need or not? Because if the answer is no, this pipeline is dead in the water right now. Okay. Second, I think the easement language is pretty darn clear. One pipe in the ground. Whether you have gas running through it or not, it's still a pipe in the ground if you cap it, fill it, whatever. And it's, in my opinion, ridiculous to have Eversource claim that, oh, we can just leave that behind because we don't want to spend the money to take it out and do the right thing. Yet again, indicative of the fact that we really can't trust them to do the right thing. Last, I would also point out that I believe the easement specifies a certain distance that they're allowed to dig that trench. Well, guess what? You can't do that and put 2 pipes in the ground. Okay, you'd have to take the first one out in order to put the second one in and still stay within the distance easement that it has to dig the trench. If you leave 2 pipes in there, the distance of the width of the trench violates the easement again. So here we are back of, well, are we gonna give them another freebie and say, go ahead and do that when it's not in our best interests? And last and most important, in my opinion, you know, it is absolutely unacceptable to allow the preferred route to go through wetlands and destroy them, okay? This isn't 1951, 52, 53 when this was originally put through, and nobody understood or cared about maintaining our wetlands and our open space, okay? How can we even be considering allowing this? If, God forbid, it gets to the point where we have no choice and this puts through, we absolutely have to mandate the alternate route that does not destroy wetlands and our open space and keeps our community the way we want it to be. To me, you know, I said this before when we had the open forum, it's a complete non-starter, okay? There's a line in the sand that we can't cross, and that absolutely has to be one of those lines that says no way. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, Jim.
Jim Hanna, 65 Elliott Street. I have 2 very quick questions. Number 1, I live in an area of Ashland that is hit by Holliston and Hopkinton very quickly, and Sherburne is shot way down the road. So I'm sort of in an intersection of activity, and I've noticed that there's a pipeline coming through. You know, pipeline, they're all over the place. But it was in Ashland. So I said, well, what the hell is that? I haven't seen anything that indicates a overlay of what the map is going to send these little things through either someone's backyard or they're going to take it on 135 and carry it into Framingham. I haven't seen anything like that. And I'm to make a decision on what I want to do. It's sort of hard to do. So I think we ought to at least educate the people as to what the options currently are on what that is. And then to give you a little clue, because I don't sit around too long, I walked into Hopkinton to find out where they were building the cement casts that the pipeline is going into. Now, this turns out not to be a trench in the ground, and they lay down 170 miles of it and cover it all up and then fix all the patches later on. This is an actual 8 by 8 by 8, sitting with concrete, sitting over in Holliston, Hopkinton, and they're making them by about a dozen at a week with all the cement, and then they're burying them in their own backyard. Now, they're certainly not they're gonna dig them up a little later on and use them as how the pipe's gonna go through, because there happens to be a hole on each side of the pipe. The chamber. There's a hole there, and that's for a pipe. So it looks like that's going into this building somewhere. except we don't know where it's going. Now, if I understand clearly, Hopkinton came down and dropped their requirement right at TJ's restaurant. What they ever were digging down 140, 135.
I don't think construction started, so.
No, that was the gas
Well,
line for that new.
A different-
No, for Hopkinton, not.
It's a different project.
Different project. Different project.
Oh, it's not a pipeline?
It's not this pipeline.
Oh, okay, not another one, just this one. Well, okay, but that brings me to a simple question is, when you got an 8x8 cylinder sitting in that represents the holding of your pipeline, you've got to be so far away from pipes on this side and so far away from pipes on this side. That's a horrendous task. You're taking up, I don't know, maybe you're taking up 12 feet of the property in order to get this 8-footer sitting in there and then be away from all the other gadgets. So I think we're way before the time. But I think talking about it is good. It might be frightening to others. I'm not frightened yet because I don't know where it's going to go. I have no idea. But thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Yes, Cliff.
Cliff Wilson, 378 Elliott Street. I wasn't really going to say anything, however, because of the question was asked, and I would like to thank all of those who have preceded me with some very eloquent questions. In reference to the original easement, just so the people are aware of it, if you want to look it up, you can go to masslandrecords.com, click on South Middlesex District, and the book and page is book 7772, page 162. That will bring up roughly 90-page document. And most of that document, just so that people are aware, most of the document explains the, well, actually, it talks about two different pipelines in that document, which is why it's so long. Number one was the Hopkinton to Framingham line, which is the one that we're dealing with here. And that was called the Framingham Transmission Line. The other one went from Hopkinton to Arlington. And that goes up in the northern part of town, and we may have to deal with that sometime in the future. Excuse me. So most of the documents in there, anyway, are explaining the different parcels that they are taking and putting their easements on. However, and I believe Adam brought it up, and it's a very good point about them, if they were to remove one, they'd have to have a wider section, because in the original document, and unfortunately, I didn't copy out the whole thing, so I don't have it.
You don't have all 90 pages?
I don't have them here. I have them at home. Was the fact that initially they had, let's say 30 feet, but they had an additional 10 feet on either side of that to be able to go in and dig it, and then they had the easement. The thing is that they do refer to it as the Framingham Transmission Line, and yet, when they get to the part where the petitioner seeks the right to place only one pipeline under said permanent easement, and said pipeline shall be buried to such depth that the pipeline will not interfere with the ordinary excuse me, small print, with the ordinary cultivation of said land. It goes on, and there are other things. But they don't say one transmission line here, they say one pipeline. So as far as I'm concerned, that, you know, they're legalese, they're spending they're again wasting the ratepayers' money by paying lawyers to pick apart what is plain English and try to translate one pipeline into, oh, it's not a pipeline if there's nothing going through it. They didn't say transmission line, they said a pipeline. So I don't care if anything's going through it or not. So either their cost factor is screwed up to begin with because they're not addressing what they should be doing is taking up the old pipeline, or their cost factor is understated because eventually, were they to get permission to do this, and were they to do this, I have a feeling that they would be facing a, sure, I lost the term. But anyway, where everybody gets together and sues them and says, come back and do it right. Class action lawsuit, thank you. Either way, the cost factor that they're proposing, I believe, is totally understated. I really don't, and again, I think the primary thing is the need. I don't think it's needed either, but I can't say anything about that. I can look at a document. This is a DPU decision within that document that states the same thing, one pipeline. So I'm gonna go back to that. I'll hit on that. You hit on the need, and I think it's a great idea to have an outside arbitrator look into it. And who knows? We can either drive the cost up and we're all gonna be paying outrageous prices, except we won't, because we'll all be on wind and solar and everything good stuff.
Geothermal.
There you go. Thank you.
Hi, Carl Hackinson, and I'm on the Conservation Commission. I just wanted, this may be a little bit repetitive, but it seems that that many of the people, the citizens in the town, are still not clear on the application process. And the board has mentioned this several times, but I will reiterate that there are two applications pending right now. One is before the Siting Board, and one is before the Conservation Commission. And they are separate applications. Joel, you mentioned a couple of things with regard to the Conservation Commission, and I just want to be clear on that too. Our charge is statutory. It's set by state statute. It's not set by the Board of Selectmen. And so we can't go outside of our charge. It's not that the Conservation Commission is ignorant of impacts other than wetland issues, direct wetland issues, but that's what we're dealing with before us. Having said that, I wouldn't underestimate, and it seems to me that you did, the significance of that application. We are taking this application seriously. I think that we're going to give it thorough consideration. Our hands are tied a little bit in talking about it other than at our meetings. It's at least scheduled for our agenda for this Monday. And so I would suggest that if people are interested in this decision locally, that they attend the Conservation Commission meetings. That, I think it's safe to say, will be ongoing for a while. We have hired a peer review to review the Eversource application before the Conservation Commission. That peer review has just begun, and that will take a little bit of time as well. But it's an ongoing process, but it's a process that we take very seriously and that we are not taking lightly. There is significant wetland potential disturbance. So the impact on Ashland is not insignificant from just a wetland perspective. And I want to make sure that people are clear on that.
Carl, is Eversource appearing on Monday? They've continued several times.
Well, they have continued several times, Stephen, and I don't know. The problem is what I think is, what I have heard is frustrating for the citizens is late notice of continued hearings. That's not, it's certainly not something I have control over. That scheduling is done through the conservation agent and the representative for Eversource. We set the 20th date not knowing where the peer review would be at that time. For a number of reasons, it didn't get started as soon as we thought it would. It's just starting to get underway now. Whether they will want to come before the commission to discuss issues, I don't know. I did write to Megan today and ask her to ask them so that we could have a little bit of a lead time and let people know whether they will be there or they won't be there. We can't speak to the issue if they're not there. And so that's frustrating for some people too that show up at the meeting and see that it was on our agenda. And we just have to explain that it was continued, because once the hearing starts, we can't deliberate without Eversource being present.
Good, okay, thank you.
K-
Sure.
I have a quick question, Carl. You mentioned that the meeting is the 20th. Last Thursday, when I had our meeting with the Nyanza Study Group, Jeff Lingham had made a comment to me that there's a potential that the meeting may be postponed because you may not have a quorum, enough of the members of the Concom. Has that since changed?
That's news to me. We have a 7-person commission, and we have two, our chair and our vice chair are recused.
Right, and there's another...
So that leaves us with 5. We could meet with 4. And
Jeff was pretty sure that there was only going to be 3 attending. There would be 1 individual that wasn't going to be able to make the meeting.
I don't know that, I don't know the
Okay,
answer
I'm
to
just
that,
going
Jeff.
by what Jeff was telling me, so I didn't want a whole bunch of people to go down and then have the meeting canceled, because, you know, the voices need to be heard, but at the same token, I want to
Yeah.
make sure that you still have the meeting.
I think that through the various avenues that this has kind of been a part of the narrative on, we've tried to keep people up to date on when they were on the agenda and when it was continued. But it's challenging sometimes.
Yep, I
Sometimes
understand.
we don't know until we show up.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating for people that take time out of their day to come down to the meetings just to find out that it's been continued. But that's, unfortunately, that's part of the process. The last I heard, there was correspondence today that I took as suggesting that we were going to go forward
Okay.
with the hearing. But if that changes, I'll try to spread that through whatever sources we have.
Thank you. I just going by what Jeff was telling me last Thursday, so.
Yeah, well, and again, it's challenging for us because we're down to 5 members
Right.
that are deliberating on this case.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl, for all your work on this. Yes, Diane?
Can I go a second?
Sure.
Thank you. Also, I would like to make sure that I thank the board for the incredible amount of work that it takes to sort through this, and so my thanks as well. So, a point of information regarding what Carl just said. I'm just trying to put the sequencing together in my mind. If the Conservation Commission hasn't deliberated or made an opinion because the peer review hasn't happened yet, how can the siting board be deliberating?
Well, that's a very good question.
We've
Thank
talked,
you.
we've talked
You know,
about that.
the fact that it's it was very presumptuous on Eversource's part to go ahead and file a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission for the preferred route when the siting board hadn't even issued a decision as to A, whether the project could go forward, and B, whether or not it was going to be the preferred route or the noticed alternative route. But I think as Carl alluded to, it's been kind of consistent with this whole process.
So.
Consistently inconsistent. so.
Okay, so it may not necessarily be in the order that,
It should be.
in a linear fashion.
From a procedural standpoint and from a legal standpoint, I think it does meet the muster. From a common sense standpoint, no.
Thank you very much.
Just to clarify that, so everybody's clear on that, what's before us is the preferred route.
Right.
And the noticed alternative is not in front of the Conservation Commission. So it's not like we're making a choice between one or the other.
That's a good
What
point.
we have is the preferred route, and that's the only thing that we're deliberating on at this point. But I agree with you, and we raised that issue at one of our hearings, that wouldn't it make more sense at least from a Conservation Commission perspective, if we were weighing both options? Because if for some reason now, the noticed alternative route is the route that the siting board agrees on, they would have to start the whole process over again at the Conservation Commission. because we have no information on that. Okay?
Good,
Thanks, Carl.
Let him up again. Yes, Mark?
Okay. In the last 5 so minutes, a lot of information there. The Senate Board and Eversource are miscommunicating somehow. Why couldn't the town in a class action suit put a cease and desist until they both are on the same page? And make Ashland known that we shouldn't be held up, or we shouldn't be dug through if they're not even gonna go by the rules. Why is that?
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll just answer that, this is a state permitting process. And we have jurisdiction over certain things such as road crossings and wetlands, but it's not a situation where we get to issue cease and desist orders. Is that?
Well, I think, Mark, there has to be work being done for us to issue a cease and desist to stop work. So they have not done any physical work yet.
Okay, I'll put it in a smaller dose. Before they actually hit the Ashland town line, and if they're miscommunicating with the sitting board, they should stop right there before the first break of ground at the Ashland town line, all the wetlands there, where we're going through, and say, did we make it through the whole branch of responsibility?
Right, they can't start until they have a decision from the siting board.
So they have to be there with all the ducks in a row to have that siting board say yes or no.
They have to meet the siting board's expectations. I don't want to say that that's our expectation.
And and where would this sitting board be held at?
Those are in Boston.
In Boston where?
I don't know where they're gonna have like the actual meetings of the siting board. I don't know if they have to schedule that in a special room, or it won't be at the State House. And it won't be at Ashburton, I know that.
And until everything gets worked together, Eversource think they can run it through and not have it be stopped, which is completely illogical to say that that's what they should be. And to have Canis Smoker's representative here doing a listening, that's gotta be, she's gotta be there for that, and for the 20th, this coming Monday, to be here. 'Cause if Eversource is not gonna be here, then this town should put a clock on them to be consistent, to be showing up.
All
If
right,
not, stop them.
All right, thanks, Mark. So, comments or thoughts from the board? We've heard a lot of interesting, useful information, and
Just thank you for everyone to come out and give us their feedback and give us their input.
And I would just comment, just looking at the docket, and there's been a substantial number of comments sent in, I would say, over the last week.
good
So
work.
I would-
Somebody put
Yeah.
an email or something out. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that is an important part of the process, to let them know about people's concerns, and that this is not a routine, because I think they're used to doing routine utility right away permitting, and let them know that this is not, doesn't fit into that category, that people are very concerned about it, and this does have larger issues such as climate change involved. One thing, I did, one of the things, I like this, the thought of an independent evaluation, and it's reached that level. Maybe that's, one of the solutions. We have not been in a position, or have not, we've had a bit of evaluation. We've raised a number of questions about need right along, but we haven't had that kind of independent evaluation. Like, is this really necessary? That, to me, is the $1 million question here, and it's literally, what, a $15 million question, because that's probably what they're gonna end up spending. So if that is really what has been lacking, that kind of well, Eversource says this is necessary, what does the other expert say? Can you put this off? Is it really necessary at the, hopefully, as we phase out fossil fuels? So I thought that was, that's something we should consider as we move forward, how we can make that happen. I think that would be really key to our,
Part of the
so I
appeal.
would suggest that to people. So, anything else?
No,
I would
no, moving on.
thank you all for coming, and
Thank you. Thank you for your
appreciate your
comments.
input, and thanks for staying with this process.
To be continued,
Yes.
literally.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, so,
We take 5.
yeah, why don't we take a 5-minute break, and
My arm is killing me.
we'll reconvene, Miles, in about 5 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Oh, my
sorry.
Recess to the, what is it, the May 15th meeting? Okay, thank you. I think we're at town meeting recap.
Manager reports.
Town
Yep.
manager report, and he's gonna
Wow,
recap town meeting.
there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we,
You
Oh,
have,
we have
fo-
a whole an hour.
you
whole
have
hour.
4 minutes,
So,
No, we're not gonna be here till 10
so.
tonight.
no.
No, just want to congratulate everyone on a very successful town meeting.
Yep.
I thought it was very successful. One of the ways I gauge that is by attendance. And we had, we had 350 people. So, over the last 3 town meetings, we've averaged about 475 to 500 people. So I think that's something that we can all be proud of. I really do appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to, in their evening, time away from their family to come spend time participating in the democratic process. I want to thank Kelly Rund for providing babysitting in the National Honor Society. I think that's been a big help.
Definitely.
I'd like to thank all the staff who, this is a logistical production as well. And so a lot of work happens, leading up to that to make sure things go smoothly. And then I just want to thank all the boards and committees for the work that they do leading up to that as well. We had, I think, most of the articles passed, all of them quite substantially. There was one that had a few more no votes than I wanted. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I always think that I don't do a good enough job then of explaining how it helps everybody or works everybody.
Yep.
But that's all I have with that. And I don't know if anybody had any other
I
thoughts
think
or
it was a
observations.
successful, well-run town meeting. I think one of the things and we'll get to it in the town, we're seeing some very strong budgets and strong support from the state for municipalities in general, and us, a history of working together with this school committee. We've kind of, allows us to kind of move on and address some, more advanced issues such as the funding, the OPEB and things like that, and hiring, additional public safety people and moving along on big projects. So, good work on that, so.
Yeah, well, the big concern was a lot of people in the past said there wasn't enough information provided for them to make a sound, vote. And I think one of the big things that you and your management team has done is provided that information, in advance. Some people wanted a month ahead. That's actually not, it's kind of impossible to have that happen in advance, that far ahead, a month ahead, because there's things that can change, sporadically throughout the procedure. So I think what you're doing is great, and I appreciate all the effort that the management team does, and the vote and the support that we have for you, and respect to the FinCom, who made some, difficult decisions, but, strong opinions, and help make that process go a lot smoother.
Yeah, very good.
So-
And I would just comment on, basically thanking, the residents that came out to town meeting and voted to support the initiatives that we've worked very hard, the board and staff, other boards and committees to promote and move forward. And we've got some very significant, substantial projects that are, have a relatively short-term timeline now that will really benefit all of us.
Yeah, looking forward to those.
Yeah.
All right. If that's it, I'll move on to state
Sure.
budget update.
Yep, go ahead.
So recently, so just to backtrack for everybody that's watching, the state budget process goes through several layers. So it starts with the governor's budget. That's usually done in January or February. It then goes through the House Ways and Means Committee, and then the House Ways and Means budget gets voted on by the full House. And then at that point, the Senate Ways and Means Committee takes it up. Senate Ways and Means Committee produces a budget. That then goes to the full Senate for a vote. And then once those two, the House and the Senate budget has been passed, the two meet in what's known as conference committee. They iron that out, gets voted on by the respective branches, and you have one budget that is done by the legislature, that gets sent to the governor, who has the opportunity to veto or sign it. If it's veto, that can come back and be overridden with a 2/3 majority. Where we are in that process right now is at the Senate Ways and Means level, where the Senate Ways and Means has actually just passed their budget, and it's going before the full Senate, and amendments are being filed. I believe the due date is the 20th. So that's just the legislative process in general. I will say, and this speaks to Rob's point, one of the key components in the budget process is state aid. So things like Chapter 70, local unrestricted aid. And one of the reasons we were able to do the things that we were able to do in the FY20 budget was due to a significant increase in state aid. And that was signaled to us in the governor's budget, and it's only gotten better as it's made its way through these cycles. So I will let you know that in 2019, our net state aid, so that is the amount of money we get, subtracting the amount of money that the state takes in a number of different categories, was $7.4 million. Okay, in 2020, the governor's budget, that number rose to $9,175,000, which was a $1,742,000 increase over 2019. Now at the Senate Ways and Means budget, that figure is now $9,278,000, so about another $100,000 more. So we're at $1,845,000 over 2019.
Now, part of that, I mean, yes, it's good that we're seeing that, is because of, we have extra students because of free full-day kindergarten.
That is,
Right, so
that is
it's
a
not,
component.
it's not just because they said, okay, let's give Ashland more money. It's because we have more students to get the dollar amount that's
they've-
required.
Yes.
And-
Increase
And
the
they've
Chapter
increased the
70
amount
funding.
for
Right.
Chapter 70,
Right.
but I applaud what our representatives are doing, but we need to be sure that the reason we're seeing the increase, some of it anyway, is tied into the fact that we now have all these kindergarten students that we're not getting tuition for. So what'll be interesting to me is, once this all gets resolved, is what's the difference in regards to what we were getting for tuition versus what we're getting in the Chapter 70 for kindergarten students? Just to understand what the true increase is.
I think it's a good point. I think we backed out, I think, close to $400,000 when we were looking at, the split, if
Yeah.
you will. But that's a very, very good point, because, we're at the point now where we're not thinking about budgets 1 year in advance.
Right.
We're thinking about them 5 years in advance. And when we talked about and put forward free full-day kindergarten a couple years ago, a couple fall town meetings ago, one of the things that was pointed out in terms of the sustainability of that program was that we would be getting more money in Chapter 78. So it's bearing fruit.
Yeah.
Very good.
So that being said, I know, Rob, you had pointed out there have been a couple of earmarks
Oh, yeah.
for Ashland projects that have made its way into the budget. So the House budget included $20,000 for multimodal pass.
All right.
The Senate budget, Senate Ways and Means budget.
And I just thank Dave, I guess Dave Rosenblum went to Representative Lewis on that one, and on behalf of the Upper Charles Trail.
Somebody did. Somebody did.
Well, I'm gonna give Dave credit, so.
We'll give Dave credit, okay. So under the Senate Ways and Means budget, there was $30,000 that was included for the hoarding task force.
Oh.
You've recently been updated on the work that's being done there.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're at 15 cases now, 13, 15? Also, $100,000 was inserted for our business incentive program that was passed through a home rule petition last year. And then the schools received $300,000 for overcrowding. This is something that is becoming more of a regular line in the budget as well. So
Now, is that utilized, or will be utilized to purchase those modules, or for future use for other?
I'm not sure. I will say that they have had trouble accessing that money in previous years.
Okay.
So,
All right.
can find that
It's
out.
a while for them to get it.
Yeah. So, that's, any other questions on the budget?
That's great.
Nope.
Great news.
Seeing that you just made that comment about how difficult it is to get those monies, you know, with respect from the schools. Are we making a push now to have Governor Baker release the funding that has been appropriated for the public safety complex? Because I know that was something that was put in a bond for $20 million.
Yes.
And
25.
25, I'm sorry. And then, but we needed to make sure that that money was gonna be released at some point. So
Right.
have we addressed that? Have we sent letters and requesting that money to be released? Or is there things that need to be given to him to show that we're actually doing the work to get it released?
So I sent letters to both our legislative delegation and Governor Baker the day after the town meeting or the ballot vote, saying,
Okay.
you know, requesting that release. What we've been advised is that the governor will not even entertain releasing that money until we have a shovel-ready project. So meaning we have the design and engineering
Everything has to
done.
be, okay.
Yeah,
All
ready
right.
to go.
Yep, got it.
So we will probably line things up to where, as we're coming to the end of that design and engineering process, we'll start ramping up to push to get those
Okay.
funds.
Thank you.
Welcome. Riverwalk project. You want to take this one, or do you want to? So, yeah.
As long as we're not importing wood from China, we're okay, right?
Yeah.
We thought so, but we got.
Actually,
How about metal?
That's what, I mean, the metal bridge is out, right?
Yeah, so we completed the bid process for a timber option. It was a timber option with a 60-foot span in the middle. After talking with our engineers, we had anticipated saving about $200,000 to $300,000 as opposed to the initial bid, which was a prefabricated steel. Unfortunately, those bids came in significantly higher than anticipated, and so the lowest bid came in right under $900,000, which again is a couple $100,000 over what we had anticipated. So I have been working with Green and to sort of modify how we rebid this. I went and spoke to Open Space yesterday. We had some ideas on how we can alter it. We could potentially go to a 10-foot, which is sort of more standard construction for the timber bridges, and allows for smaller equipment and a little bit less of invasive access. So we'll work over that in the next week or so, hoping to go right back out to bid so that we can still start this project during this construction season.
And we're looking at the potential of doing some of the work in-house, not necessarily the bridge construction, but some of the
Clearing.
land, clearing and things like that. So we're looking at a number of different things, but
Good.
we'll problem solve.
Any thought about doing a combination steel and wood bridge, where you would have the skeletal as the steel portion, and then the wood as the,
That was the steel bridge, like you would still
That's
have
how
the
the steel-
composite
yeah, the
decking.
steel, yeah.
oh, so, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thanks.
That just requires very large equipment.
Is this a project that we could reach out to people, businesses, or, I don't know who, to get other grant money to help pay for this difference? So that we're
laborers
not
or-
changing the look as much as it sounds like we're gonna be changing it again?
You know, ironically, I think the look that we might end up with is probably more towards the original of what was presented at town meeting
Okay.
than the steel bridge option. We're always looking for different sources of.
How about Audubon? No, they wouldn't consider that? How about the Sudbury River Trust?
Well, I think, so you know my patience level.
I
But we also have grant funds
And
that we already have, that we have to,
Have to use by a certain time.
Yeah, that's a good
Sunset.
point, yeah. So, yeah, we can't lose those. So
Right.
those made up half the
So
project.
it sounds like a good plan to revise and go back out for something that's more economical.
Okay.
on a brighter note, the parking spaces off of Ponderosa and the ADA compliance will be complete this week. So I went out there
Nice.
today. It looks really nice. So they've
Oh, that's
completed
good.
the trail and made it ADA compliant out to the observation platform, and
To
they've
go
sort
out
of,
there.
there was a, they made the approach also ADA compliant. So that should be all complete by the end of this week if the weather
Great, I'll
cooperates.
have to look at
Very
that.
good.
Looks good. Finally, I just want to give you an update on the MWRA connection. I did forward to you, I think, last week. We did receive approval from DEP to move forward with the MWRA connection. That was a big hurdle. Legislation actually has to get passed, allowing us to join the MWRA. That has been filed. And I think probably the biggest news is that bids for the construction of the actual project are due early June, right? Actually, Southborough will be doing the work, but the bids are scheduled to be in early June. So I think we're still on track to try to get this thing open by the end of the
No, the bids go to
calendar year.
Southborough, or they come to us?
Southborough.
They go to Southborough, okay.
So, I think, there was a question at town meeting about funding for the MWRA connection, and that funding is still in place, so.
We approved
So
earlier.
it's the, okay.
Yeah, good.
Very good. That's it. Thank you. Any
Excellent.
more,
Thank you.
any
Yeah.
questions? Thanks for the update, Michael. Okay, so I think that brings us to board reports. Joe, you want to start us
Sure.
off?
Be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was kind of hectic for the last couple of days, and I had some great events that I went to and participated in. The first one was May 4th. That was that Saturday where we green up Ashland.
Oh, yeah.
And my responsibility was House Street and sling and all. Picked up trash, which was fun. But it was nice to see that over 173 people also participated, and we're out there not just in one section of town, but all areas of town, which is great. Brandy was out there with her son, though she said begrudgingly, he looked like he was having fun doing what he was doing. But so I just want to thank all the volunteers that came out that day and everybody that put the event on. And kudos to all of them, because it's not an easy event to plan. And even though it was kind of rainy in the beginning, it did brighten up a little bit in the afternoon. May 5th, that's Sunday, I represented the board at an Eagle Scout ceremony, and that was Garrett Perry, whose project was several bridges, wooden bridges in the town forest. Saw the bridges and actually walked them a couple of times. He did a fantastic job. And just a quick side comment about Troop 232, which used to be Troop 2 and Troop 32, and then they combined. We have more Eagle Scouts per capita in Metro West than any other town. And it's just absolutely incredible that the group of men and women that are involved in this program, in the Scouts program, developing the leaders of tomorrow. And these kids are just, it's an honor to be there, to listen to what they have to say, and to see the pride of the parents of the recipients of getting this Eagle Scout Award. It's just, you have to be there. It's incredible. I get chills, I enjoy it, and so thank you to the board for allowing me to
Thank you for
participate.
doing that, Joe.
Because it's a lot of fun.
Wait, did you hand out a coin?
I
Oh,
was just
yes.
gonna bring that up.
The coin story.
That was the first coin that was issued. First selectman coin was issued to Garrett, and I told him, I said, this is a challenge coin. I said, anybody that was in the service, and about 7 or 8 people raised their hands, and they said, you have to carry it with you all the time. I said, that's right. Or else you owe that person a drink,
boy.
but for you, it'll be a soda. And, but it was great. So that was the first one that we issued out, which is very nice. On May 9th, the Nianza Study Group met with the EPA. Lisa Thought and Kelsey Dunville represented the EPA. And they began to discuss the 5-year plan regarding Nianza and the cleanup process, which is still in continuing tweaking that process. The full report has not been completed yet. That'll be another 4 or 5 months down the road before we get that. This was just an update as to where we are. One of the concerns that I did have when they were talking about it, as the rest of the folks on the committee, was the DNAPL that's still coming out of a specific area within that site itself. And, so they're keeping watch on it, and they want to make sure that all the pumps are working properly and not working the way they should be working. And it's more like a sump pump. So if there's something wrong with the retractor, if the retractor's not working properly, there may not be enough suction to get the DNAPL up out of the ground. So that was one of the concerns. So they were gonna follow up on that, which was one of the key things. The other thing was the Traffic Study Committee. If you haven't been up to Prospect and Elliott Street, they've implemented the 4-way stop. The signs are lit. So if there's an accident, it's all human error. It can't be because they can't see the signs, it can't be for whatever. And again, I'll go back to my comment originally, was that you can put everything up there, but the person behind the wheel of that car is responsible. So, let's hope it works to some degree, that it works out. I know it's probably an inconvenience for a lot of the folks that live up in that way, but let's give it time to see how it works. So, but that's it. Oh, and one last thing, I'm sorry. Ken Rush, I wish you the very best. Ken has been involved as long as with his wife. Been on many, many committees, and he was a very valuable town meeting member who asked some great questions when it came to finances and everything. And Ken and his wife are moving to Florida, and I just want to wish them the very best and thank you for being a great resident and a comrade on several committees that I had the pleasure of being with him. So, thank you. That's it.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
So Michael mentioned this earlier, I participated in the YMCA project meeting. It was great to have the YMCA come into Ashland, talk to us about their process. I know people are excited, when is it gonna happen? It's probably still a 4-year process before we're gonna see the YMCA up and running, but they are gonna start reaching out to the community, looking for input, and talking to people in Ashland, Holliston, and Hopkinton about what they'd like to see. So be prepared for that. You'll probably see them at some farmers markets and things like that through the summer. I was not able to attend Green Up Ashland this year, unfortunately, but a big thank you to the committee and to all the residents who volunteered. I know it was not a great day for it, but it's always fun to see those yellow bags along the side of the road where people have gone and picked up, and I think even Sunday there were people out picking stuff up, so that was nice to see. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to attend the Senior Center Volunteer Appreciation Luncheon. A big thank you to Joanne Duffy and Kim Katob for organizing it and for seeing all the volunteers that are there. It's amazing how many people are there helping make our senior center what it is. It's just such a great place. I did say, Steve, usually you would have been there and you would have said something, so.
Well,
You have something to
had
tell us.
something
I know.
that preempted that, unfortunately.
That's okay. So as Joe said, the signs, the 4-way stop signs are up on Elliott and Prospect. And not only are the signs there, but there are now 4 red flashing lights on all sides that you can see from far away. But what's interesting is there was someone there from cable today watching some of this get put up. And he said in the first half hour or hour after it was done, people were still blowing through the stop signs.
Of course.
So,
Doesn't
yeah,
Maybe
be
they'll
aware,
learn.
take your
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
and pay attention.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. 2 things that I'll be attending next week. Thursday is the Metro West Regional Collaborative meeting happening in Holliston. And then I'll also be attending the MAPC Annual Council meeting on May 29th in Boston. And then, of course, for everybody, town elections are Tuesday, May 21st. So next week, Tuesday, polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and everyone votes at the high school. So get out. There's some important races on the ballot. And that's all I have.
And we're supposed to have good weather that day.
Supposed to have good weather, so
Let's
Yeah.
hope so.
not like the torrential downpours from last year.
Oh, my God, I know.
So I also want to extend best wishes to Ken and Janet Rush.
Yes.
Both, Janet served as an assessor for a while, and, as Joe mentioned, Ken's been involved, and Yolanda mentioned earlier this evening about Ken being on the high school building committee, so he's been involved for a long time. So, certainly extend best wishes for good retirement down in Florida.
And we will miss Ken at
Shuffleboard,
town meeting.
playing shuffleboard in
Yeah.
Florida.
All right.
So,
We'll miss him at town meeting.
yeah. A note, this Sunday is Showcase India event at the high school.
right.
High school cafeteria,
That's right.
3 o'clock in the afternoon to 5. So they'll be having, I know they're having dancers, they're having the food tasting, so there'll be a variety of events going on to showcase our Indian community. It's co-sponsored by the town of Ashland. So it's, should be a very nice event. The Indian community has done events in the past, and it's always been interesting, and it's always amazing to just to see the dress and just the you wouldn't call them costumes. I mean, they're
It's their clothing.
their clothing,
Yeah.
and it's just it's just amazing to see everybody dressed up, and so it should be a great event. I understand it's no charge, it's just a showcase. So that's Sunday, May the 19th, 3 to 5 at Ashland High School. And then lastly, to respond to my lack of attendance at the volunteer senior event, I was invited, and I have to thank our chair for recommending that I do participate. The EPA had requested the town of Ashland and the Stormwater Committee if they would do a webinar. And so I got an opportunity to participate on that, and it was really, really a great experience. There was, I believe, slightly over 100 communities from around the country that were logged in, and we went through our process of, starting from, a recognition that we had to comply with the MS4 permit, up through the creation of the committee, and right through all the presentations, the education. We talked about, our process, what happened, politically and dynamically, and, the fact that the committee, in retrospect, they thought it was, it turned out to be a great process.
Right.
Initially, when they came before the board, they wanted us to sign on right then and there to move forward with town meeting, and we had, said, let's do some more education here. And as it turned out, it was for the best. So it was a really good, Rob St. Germain did a great job pulling it all together. Megan Dos Anjos, our conservation agent, participated. Evan White, our town engineer, participated, in myself. So it was really a very nice event. So that's my tune tonight.
Thank you for representing Ashland in such a
it
great
was great.
positive way.
And your work on that. Now, will this webinar be available? Like, how do?
You can access it, I believe you can access it through the EPA website.
Oh, boy.
And it might be
On
something we
video,
put on.
Or a deck, or?
Well, it's a PowerPoint.
A PowerPoint, okay.
And I don't know if they tape webinars or not, but,
Yeah.
we should be able to pull at least the PowerPoint and put it online, so.
Okay.
Can I just add
Sure.
something real quick? And you mentioned Rob St. Germain.
Yeah.
Garrett honored Rob St. Germain for all the work that he helped with all the different bridges in the town forest. And he acknowledged all the work by Rob St. Germain by giving him one of those eagle pins of acknowledgement.
Oh, that's great.
Which was nice. So
Yeah.
Rob was very honored and proud. You could tell
that's
that
nice.
he was very humbled by it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's
but,
great.
that's
He
great.
actually,
Good
I'm
guy.
glad you mentioned that, because Rob, we may be getting a request. I'm assuming everybody's been in the town forest, and as you go up on the Winter Street parking lot, as you go up, not that long, there's a stone house to the left. Have you been to the stone house?
Not recently.
Have
I'm
you?
trying to remember that.
It's been a while.
There's a stone house up there.
It's a stone house, and apparently the story is a woman not from Ashland, built a couple of these structures as kind of a cottage. And so they're
Before
crumbling.
it was the town forest, or after, or?
I can't,
Okay.
we'll have to
We don't know
dig
the
into the
history.
history, but there's an interest in at least stabilizing these structures and at least keeping them for historical purposes there. Not to rebuild them, but just to stabilize them.
them.
So Rob may be coming to the board at some point, asking for some assistance with an Eagle Scout project.
Okay.
And there are a couple of masons already that are willing to
Well,
provide their services
That's
to
right,
help with
so,
that too.
if we
Yeah,
can,
that's
we
pretty
can
cool.
utilize some of our BAA money to support this, I think it'd be a good thing, but he'll come before us.
Okay.
All right, I just had a few items, but first, a little housekeeping. So we're, as Yolanda said, next Tuesday is town election, and we're actually not scheduled to meet again until June 5th, which is 3 weeks away. So I suppose, and I've asked Mike if there's anything pressing. So I think I would just suggest that people just be prepared to meet if something comes up. I don't know if people had thoughts about wanting to meet before the 3 weeks are up, or just something to keep in mind.
you know, especially if there's something, you know, if something comes up, so try to
Yeah, I
keep
would
those.
say keep it open, keep
Yeah.
the night
Keep a
open, and if something
placeholder for
comes
2
open,
weeks.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2
so the
weeks from
May
now, maybe the
29th.
week before, or something like that, but I just
Even if
wanted to
it
kind
can
of
just
give
be
a
a
heads
short
up.
meeting, if, you know,
Yeah,
I think that might be
yeah,
good, rather
just to
than
touch
waiting.
base. Or we
waiting
could
3
give Mike
weeks.
and Jenna and Susan a break from us for 3 weeks, but.
I think all I said
You
is
really
that
think we're giving
sometimes,
him a break for the 3 weeks, Ross? Come on.
Well, that's true.
And Susan will give a break,
Yeah.
and Michael.
you know, we gotta implement the stuff that we talk
Right.
about.
Right, exactly. All right, so, and the other thing, you know, this is, I'm realizing my reign as chair is coming to an end, after our traditional reorganization, which will happen after the,
First meeting in
after
June.
the first meeting in June after the election. And I did, one thing I was kind of reviewing stuff, and I realized we talked about this, but we never really got back to it, and that is the name of the board and how we refer to ourselves, and you'll remember that discussion. I've been kind of intentionally using terms like select board and member of the select board, and so I think we should revisit that, and I'd like to put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and for the next chair to handle. I'll come up with some language that we can adopt, and especially, you know, I heard that Hopkinton has done this, so I hate it when Hopkinton does something good before us, so.
Hopkinton does it,
It
doesn't
doesn't mean
mean.
Well,
we
all right,
And-
so
and I would
it
actually,
may be that it could be a 2-2 vote,
They
so we'll have
passed a
to.
We're
non-binding
gonna have to wait for
referendum.
that.
So that
first,
seems like a
so
good model.
I would like to
Pretty
make
sure it's
one
non-binding.
statement, though, because
Yes,
at the beginning of our last meeting, you called everyone else select men, but you referred to me as select person. So it's either we're all select people, or select men, which I'm not opposed to, because that's what I am, or select woman. So we need to be aware that whatever term we're using,
so you see, we have
are
this discussion.
consistent.
This is why we got,
Across the
you
board.
could see why we got a little
Good point.
derailed here, yeah,
Good point.
yeah.
I agree with Yolanda. on this
On
point.
what?
If I'm a select person,
What-
so are you.
Oh,
So-
okay, so this is the
But
kind
I-
of discussion we
I-
should
But you
have.
and I
prefer
have been, I
selectmen.
think, consistent with using select board as, you know,
Yeah.
since we had that.
Yeah.
And, you know, first of all, Hopkinton, you know, I don't use them as a benchmark for anything, to be honest with you, so. But
boy.
as much as I love Hopkinton.
Yeah.
But I think it was town meeting that actually voted to change the name.
At Hopkinton,
That
oh,
was
that's
at
interesting.
Town meeting, so
So-
they still have to do a charter
All right,
change,
so
which we
we're-
would have to do the same thing.
Right.
So I guess I will ask maybe Michael, so you're saying that Hopkinton is not is a little more advanced model? Maybe we come up with a plan or something for
Yeah,
discussion.
and I'm
don't know
pretty
that it
sure
should
it
be
was
the
a
first meeting
non-binding
after the
referendum.
election.
Well, see, this is
Let's-
how we never get things done, though, so,
Well, I
okay.
disagree.
I'm gonna put it on the agenda, and then people can vote it down, I guess. So, so Michael, I don't know if it makes sense to talk to Norman over there, maybe get some pointers, not that we wanna use Hopkins as a role model.
Yeah, I think
But-
Norman was out of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think this was a.
It was a citizen's petition.
Citizen's
Ah.
Yeah.
So maybe that's it, just, I think we
But I
should
think
have
we
a.
have the purview
Yes,
to,
right.
you know, certainly call ourselves whatever
Yes,
we
right,
want.
exactly, which,
Especially when we hand out the BS coin, you know.
that's right, the BS coin. So I'm going to try to put it back on there, and we will have a new membership, so who knows what'll
Right,
happen.
you never know.
Yeah, we'll have at least, we'll be back to 5 members, so, okay. All right, so, and so I also just wanted to say that, you know, I've been chair, I think for the last year and a half, and I really appreciate the support and the ongoing, shall we say, guidance from other members of the board. But, and really, no, seriously, the support of the other members and the town manager and staff and your you know, I feel it's been a privilege to allow me to serve as chair for the past year and a half, and I wanted to thank Carl for being part of that as well, of course. And, you know, I was just thinking about some of the things that, you know, we've gone through in the last year and a half. There's really been a lot of successful things. Town meetings run well-run budgets, adding to public safety, the public safety building, the continued kind of proactive town government that's trying to positively shape what's going on, such as downtown and continuation of Route 126, all the various land protection, the Valentine Estate, all that. So I really think that's been,
Mendez
Mendez,
building.
yeah,
Usability.
yeah,
Girl
exactly.
Scout camp.
Oh, yeah, preserving the Girl
Preserving
Scout
Girl
camp,
Scout
that was,
camp,
yeah,
and lo-
That
another
was a
great
bunch of
That
move,
was more
yeah.
than a year and a
And
half
adding
ago.
to the town forest,
But still.
and,
Oh,
so,
yes, you did.
you know, and that's not even talking about, the marijuana facility and all that. And that was really, it didn't come out quite the way I had hoped, but, that was, I thought, a very useful process, and quite an experience. And of course, now we're challenged with the Eversource process as well. So a lot going on, and I wanted to thank you all. So apparently my bid to be chair for life has failed. Apparently it hasn't. So anyway, so thank you all, and,
Thank
we'll
you,
look
thank
forward
you
to.
for taking all the time and effort
Yeah.
and being our
Thank you
chair.
Yeah.
as well.
And before we go, I just want to thank everybody here on the board, from management to you folks, because I don't know what's going to happen on Tuesday.
Oh, that's right, yep.
So it's been a real pleasure and honor to be part of this board, because we've done a lot of great things.
Yeah.
I hope that after Tuesday night, I'll still be part of this board to continue doing the things and the initiatives that we've been looking for. If not, then I appreciate the time and effort that I've put towards the town. And I appreciate the citizens in supporting me over the last 9 years. So,
Yeah, good. Well
but
said.
a guided
Said, Joe.
confidence, so,
Yep.
you know, we'll never know what's gonna happen, but
No.
we'll see.
Right.
We'll
Good
see.
luck.
Well,
Right,
thank you.
Thank you for your service as well. And I
Yes.
think, you know, one of the things for me that's been certainly changed a lot, and I think you would agree, Joe, because we started to serve within a year of each other, but just a whole different level of cooperation and collaboration with other boards and committees, I think, just in general. And
You're right, and I think it started with, you know, getting away from the us versus them with respect to the schools. And that just seemed to filter right down through all, you know, through all the other town boards and everything else, and it worked out well that way. Because we're part of a community, we're not individually fighting back and forth, and that's what it's all about, so.
Yeah, all right.
So it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all.
It
So
continues.
with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, none. Thank you, we're adjourned, and.